Chapter 3201. Apparently, she was strangled. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased slightly. Strangled? Maidservant Yang was strangled to death? What's the matter, Imperial Madam? Did you discover something? Grand General had been paying attention to Yi Qing Luo's expression, and on seeing her reaction, he immediately opened his mouth to ask. Yi Qing Luo threw away the wood shavings in her hands. Maidservant Yang should be killed by someone familiar. Familiar? Grand General immediately looked outside the kitchen, at those commoners who had an unfriendly expression. To Maidservant Yang, the only people he was familiar with were these commoners. Stop trying to sow discord. You're obviously the one who killed Maidservant Yang, and you're trying to push the blame to us? The commoners were instantly unconvinced. They were just a bunch of old, weak, and disabled people without the strength to even trust a chicken. How could they possibly kill a person? Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up slightly as her narrow eyes squinted. According to the current situation, Maidservant Yang should be preparing to cook some food in the middle of the night. These charcoal should be lit in the middle of the night. She pointed to the ground, at the charcoal, which was scattered beside the corpse. The expression on Maidservant Yang's face is not fear, but shock. Do you think that if I appeared in the kitchen and wanted to kill Maidservant Yang, would she feel shocked? Or fear? Yi Qing Luo crossed her arms as she asked the question with a smile, which didn't look like a smile. The commoners' clamoring stopped. They put themselves in the shoes. If it was them, seeing Yi Qing Luo appearing behind them in the middle of the night, with a face full of killing intent, they would absolutely scream out in fear, as they fled frantically. Absolutely could not be. Shock. Then what if? Maidservant Yang was shocked that you were able to sneak into the kitchen without being discovered. You could just kill her directly. Just when everyone was speechless, another voice started to stir up the pace. I'm a cultivator. Is it very difficult for me to do it silently? Yi Qing Luo ridiculed as her lips curled upwards. The commoners were gagged as they kept their mouths shut. Yi Qing Luo slowly shifted to Mo Xian's side, as her voice was calm. No matter if you believe me or not, this has nothing to do with me. I only want to remind you, why would Maidservant Yang appear in the kitchen to cook food in the middle of the night? And who could it be that appeared in the kitchen and left her in such disbelief that she was so shocked before she died that she couldn't rest in peace? Saying that, Yi Qing Luo held onto Mo Xian's arm as she turned around and stepped out of the kitchen. The people were stunned by her aura. He was also shocked by the deeper meaning of her words. No one spoke up to stop him. The general glanced at the soldiers beside him and ordered in a low voice, "Call the military doctor over to check the cause of death. Let the other commoners return to their courtyards." After he finished his instructions, the Grand General took a step forward and chased after Yi Qing Luo's footsteps. "Great General." Yi Qing Luo suddenly spoke out once again. Her voice was a little deep. She stopped in her tracks and slowly raised her head to stare at the general's handsome face. "There is something that I have to remind you of. These commoners were not very cultured, but they could say that they were worried about the soldiers, so they came to find trouble with them. Furthermore, he knew how to flatter them. Would you believe it if I said that there was no one guiding him?" The great general seemed as though he was stunned by Yi Qing Luo's words as he stood stiffly on the spot. A pair of dignified eyes, so dark that it was gloomy. How would he not hear the meaning in Yi Qing Luo's words? Someone was behind the scenes, manipulating everything. Try to make use of the commoners. To deal with Yi Qing Luo? Chapter 3202. And in this safety zone, the one who could incite the hearts of the people. The Grand General's gaze turned darker and gloomier. He slowly moved his gaze, looking around the people, searching for something, but after searching one round. But he hadn't found the person he was looking for. The Grand General's expression turned uglier by the minute. This was their South Waves continent's private affairs. Yi Qing Luo had no intention to interfere. She held Mo Xian's arm as she raised her head to look at his handsome side profile. "Ah, Xian, let's go play with the glower flame fan." Mo Xian glanced sideways at her. His shimmering peach blossom eyes were filled with emotions. The two of them held each other's hands as they walked past those commoners who unknowingly moved their feet aside and gave way to the entrance of the safety zone. Suddenly, the safety zone, which had fallen into a strange silence, was heard stumbling footsteps. Matron Wong stumbled as she rushed forward. "No way. You can't leave. Before there's any evidence to prove that you're not the killer, you can't leave this place." She pounced forward as the depths of her old eyes were filled with a chilling glint. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. This Matron Wong seemed a little strange. "She's stopping us from leaving the safety zone." DMO, Xian's deep voice floated down from above. Yiqing Luo's eyes flickered slightly. "Intentionally. What's your motive?" DMO, Xian's brows rose slightly as his thin lips curled up frivolously. His slender fingers tapped on his cheek. "Yiqing Luo, in this kind of situation, please don't draw hatred, all right?" Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes at DMO Xian as she tugged his arm, ignoring Matron Wong's wails behind her as she left on her own. Since Matron Wong wanted to make her and DMO Xian stay, they couldn't stay here any longer. "Are you feeling guilty? Earlier you intentionally put on an act in the kitchen and spouted nonsense, just to make our safety zone's commoners suspect each other, and then kill each other. In this way, you'll be able to get rid of these eyesore commoners without any effort, isn't it?" Old Maid Wong was roaring at the top of her lungs behind her. "Shut up," the Grand General bellowed furiously. "Matron Yang's death. I will give you justice. Stop fooling around in front of me." As soon as the great general spoke, the soldiers behind her stood in a row, blocking the commoners and Old Woman Wong's path. Old Woman Wong cried unwillingly, "What justice? You're in cahoots with her. How could you possibly give us justice? Aren't you the great general? Are you going to watch us die inexplicably one by one in front of you?" This rebuttal was barbaric to the extreme. The general was so angry that he ordered the soldiers to drag Old Maid Wong away. Yiqing Luo, who was walking to the entrance, frowned slightly. The world was vast, and there were all sorts of people. These commoners were really ingrates that could not be tamed. It was no wonder that they were able to survive until now. It was because of their selfishness that they feared death. However, none of this had much to do with her. She had said everything she needed to say. Whether they listened or not was up to the commoners. After all, when it came to brainwashing, she couldn't be compared to that black-robed lady called Xiao Feng. Just as she was about to leave, she suddenly saw Tang Beiyuan rushing over anxiously. "Overlord, Qing Luo, I've finally found you. What happened?" Yiqing Luo's brows creased. Chapter 3203. Secluded Palace's side has started to take action. Tang Beiyuan's expression congealed. Secluded Palace's disciples, with 150 people plus 50 corpse puppets as a team, split into 5 to 6 teams and left the base. When Yiqing Luo heard that, she exchanged glances with DMO Xian. Have the other disciples from the Imperial Palace rushed over? DMO Xian asked in a deep voice. They have already rushed over last night and are already prepared in the dark, ready to take action anytime. Tang Beiyuan replied. DMO Xian's long arm circled around Yiqing Luo's shoulder as he looked at her seriously. Remember, you must listen to my arrangements and don't act on your own. Otherwise, I will lock you on my body, making you unable to move. The meaning behind his words. They were about to carry out the plan which they had planned last night. Secluded Palace wanted to take the opportunity to strike, catching them unprepared. Then they beat them at their own game and directly attacked their Secluded Palace's main camp. After taking care of the Palace of Darkness base in the South Wave continent and destroying those defective undead puppets, how else could Secluded Palace invade South continent? Yiqing Luo's eyes sparkled as her lips curled slightly. Let's go. The three of them immediately turned around and had just stepped out of the main door. Matron Wong pounced onto the soldiers' obstructing arms as she pointed at Yiqing Luo's back and started scolding. You have a guilty conscience. You want to escape? Do you see that, Grand General? That slut is trying to escape from punishment. Why are you still obstructing us? Hurry and chase after them. Grand General's brows were tightly knitted as his dignified eyes stared at Yiqing Luo and the other three's backs. This action of hers, doesn't it already prove that she is the murderer who killed Matron Yang? Otherwise, why would she escape? Grand General, did you already know about everything, but you turned a blind eye to it, because you wanted that slut to kill all of us, right? Seeing that the Grand General still had no reaction, Old Maid Wang continued to howl nonstop. Grand General's brows were filled with anger. The soldiers were so angry that they wanted to give Matron Wang a few slaps on her old face. But, as a soldier's good qualities, it made them swallow the anger in their hearts. Check the cause of Matron Yang's death. Also, keep a close watch on these commoners. After saying this, the great general did not want to look at the clamoring commoners anymore. The general quickly left the safe zone. His eyes quickly scanned the surroundings. But he didn't discover Yiqing Luo and the others. He rushed to the inn. In the inn, those young mercenaries of the World Group had all disappeared. Great General. The soldiers who were resting in the main hall spoke up. The Overlord and Madame D. Zun seemed to have something urgent to attend to. They left this batch of weapons behind and left in a hurry. Following the direction of the soldier's finger, the Great General looked over. On the counter of the inn, there was a pile of smaller weapons. The Great General glanced at them. There were about 20 to 30 of them. It is very likely that Tenebra's palace will attack South Water Continent today. Madam Emperor wants you to discuss with Wind Valley Sect Master to defend South Water Continent as much as possible. Another soldier said, as long as you can hold on and defend Valley Wind City, she can guarantee that after today, the South Tide Continent will return to its former peace. The expression on the general's face changed slightly. The Overlord and Madame D. Zun and the others. What on earth were they planning? South Water Continent, really? After today, would it be able to return to its former state? Chapter 32:04. The moment he chose to believe in Yiqing Luo, he could only choose to continue believing in her. I will head over to the Ancient Wind Sect now. Call the brothers to gather urgently and be on guard. The Great General swept all the weapons on the counter into his space pocket and turned towards the direction of the Valley Wind Sect. On the other side, Yiqing Luo and her entourage led the same group of Imperial Palace's disciples as they quietly approached the Palace of Darkness base. Under DMO Shin's arrangement, the Imperial Palace's disciples were arranged to hide in the blind spots near the base. Devil Class's entourage were arranged to be in the middle of the Imperial Palace's disciples. Yiqing Luo carefully sized up the surroundings of the base. This place was located at the east of Valley Wind City, behind a dilapidated temple, which was more secluded. Because of the great battle, no one would pass by here. But it was precisely because this was the place. It was easier for them to arrange the blind spots which they could hide in. Follow me closely. DMO Shin pinched Yiqing Luo's little hand as his deep voice was filled with solemnity. Yiqing Luo raised her other hand and hooked his neck as she pulled him down. Following that, she tiptoed and bit his lips. The rest, wait for us to come out and continue. DMO Shin's eyes flashed as his thin lips curled into an evil smile. All right, I'm looking forward to it. The two of them exchanged glances. Following that, they turned into two remnant shadows as they disappeared from everyone's sight. The two of them were very fast, and their presence was concealed very well. The Palace of Darkness disciples who were guarding outside the base totally didn't notice their presence. Infiltrating into the base was very smooth. In Yiqing Luo's mind, the map which DMO Shin had drawn was already stored. Very quickly, she understood the place which they were at. DMO Shin also clearly recorded down the time when the Palace of Darkness disciples patrolled, and DMO Shin was around. The two of them infiltrated into the base's inner area, and it was simply too smooth. They moved swiftly along the way. Very quickly, they arrived at the secret room, which DMO Shin mentioned. The security here was much stronger than when DMO Shin came yesterday. 10 over Palace of Darkness disciples were guarding nearby, and occasionally, the patrol team would come over to take a look. DMO Shin and Yiqing Luo were hiding in a room near the secret room. Increase your vigilance. Today is the most crucial moment. If the Elephant Saint technique succeeds, we will be able to obtain the secret technique of the Dark Palace tomorrow, raise our Xian rank, and ascend to the upper realm. Suddenly, a clear voice rang out in the base. A tall and slender figure stood with his hands behind his back. His clothes were high and mighty, and he was gesticulating. Also, Team 2, get ready to support Xiang Xingfa. Don't just stand there in a daze. If something happens, can you bear the responsibility? That figure swaggered towards the direction where Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian were hiding as he walked over. As soon as the man approached, Yiqing Luo's pupils dilated slightly. This person was none other than, and it was an old acquaintance, wasn't it? The one in the Heavenly Academy, the former faculty council president, Si Yinmu. Why was he here? Look at his arrogant look. It seemed that his position in the Palace of Gloomy Darkness was not bad. Creak. Si Yinmu pushed open the door. Dmo Xian and Yiqing Luo exchanged glances. As long as Si Yinmu closed the door and discovered them, they would immediately make a move. But after Si Yinmu entered the room, he swaggered towards the bookshelf in front. Chapter 32:05. Asyong is really, it's just a valley wind city. It can be settled easily. Why must he be so careful? Si Yinmu muttered in a low voice. After that, he fished out a token from the bookshelf. He took the token and walked out of the room. Under the order of Xiangsheng Fa, I want to go in. Si Yinmu raised the token and spoke to the secluded palace's disciple who was guarding the entrance. The secluded palace's disciple took the token, flipped it a few times, and stepped back. You must come out within the time it takes to burn a stick of incense. Si Yinmu curled his lips and patted his elegant robe. I don't want to stay in that disgusting place for long. No need to burn a stick of incense. After that, he raised his head high and strode towards the secret room. Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian's lips curled upwards. They were still thinking about how to sneak into the secret chamber without anyone noticing. Unexpectedly, heaven was on her side. Yiqing Luo expressed, this was the first time she felt that Si Yinmu looked rather pleasing to the eye. The secret room door opened and Si Yinmu walked in. Swoosh, swoosh, 2 gusts of cold wind hit them. The secluded palace's disciples were blown by this cold wind. One by one, they raised their hands and touched their faces. What's going on? What was that? Wind? The secluded palace's disciples looked around in puzzlement, but they didn't find anything unusual. One of the secluded palace's disciple frowned and said, Mr. C, please wait a moment. Si Yinmu was thinking of entering the secret room quickly to complete the task given by Xiangsheng Fa. Suddenly, he heard someone calling him. He turned back impatiently. What? Mr. C, do you feel anything strange? The secluded palace's disciple saw Si Yinmu's normal expression and asked cautiously. No. Si Yinmu waved his hand impatiently. What are you all so worried about? This is your secret base. Other than you, who else knows about this place? Even if they know about this place, who dares to come here? Besides, with all of you keeping a tight watch, even a fly wouldn't be able to get in. What strange thing could happen? The secluded palace's disciple laughed along. Mr. C is right. We are overthinking. Please, please. Si Yinmu snorted and quickly walked into the secret chamber. The door to the secret room was closed. The smiling face of the Palace of Darkness disciple collapsed. Puffed. Isn't it just a stinking brat who can ride 10,000 men? You still dare to be unreasonable in front of your father, who asked us not to be like him. So shameless, treating ourselves as women and flattering him in all kinds of ways. Another disciple of the secluded Darkness Palace agreed. Several disciples of secluded Palace expressed their dissatisfaction with Si Yinmu. The strange feeling he felt just now was also thrown to the back of his mind. At this moment, Yiqing Luo nestled in Dmo Xian's arms as she stood steadily in the secret room. Si Yinmu was minding his own business and walked forward. He did not notice that there were 2 more people behind him. The minute she entered the secret room, Yiqing Luo smelt an extremely pungent stench. The air was filled with dense, qi. It gave people an extremely uncomfortable feeling. Yen Mu, who was in front, was also affected by the stench and was swearing as he moved forward. After walking for a while, a winding staircase appeared in front of him. Yen Mu walked down. Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian followed closely behind. The circular staircase dazzled one's eyes. Chapter 32:06. The moment he stopped, his line of sight happened to see, behind him, the two figures on the stairs above him. You guys, Yen Mu was stunned, his eyes widened. How did you get in? This kind of spiraling stairs. It was only a matter of time before they were discovered. Yiqing Luo had no intention to continue hiding in the dark when they reached the secret chamber. The two who were discovered didn't show any signs of panic. President C, long time no see. Yiqing Luo greeted him with a sweet smile. Yen Mu stared at Yiqing Luo's face in shock. That face which made him hate and loathe. His pupils kept expanding. How could it be you? Why are you here? What are you trying to do? It's been so long. Don't you miss me? Yiqing Luo continued smiling. As for why we are here, it's because we followed you in. Yen Mu recalled when they walked into the secret chamber. The secluded palace disciples questioned him. He felt a chill down his spine. These two people actually followed him into the secret room under the watchful eyes of so many guards. That was enough to tell how strong were their abilities. Even if he was under the protection of the sacred elephant technique, basically no one in the profound grade could defeat him. But Yiqing Luo was not an ordinary person. Moreover, the man beside Yiqing Luo, he was absolutely not their match. Yen Mu clenched his fists tightly. His eyes were covered with a chilly intent. What are you trying to do? The smell in this secret chamber is so pungent. I wonder what kind of shameful things your secluded palace are doing in this secret chamber. Yiqing Luo looked at him smilingly. My dear husband and I are very curious about this secret chamber, so we are here to take a look. President C doesn't have any objections, right? This is the base of the secluded palace. Yen Mu suppressed his anger. Do you believe that as long as I shout, the disciples of the secluded palace will rush over? Yiqing Luo raised her brows. I don't believe it. Do you think that just the two of you can escape from this base? Yen Mu was infuriated by Yiqing Luo's fearless look. Get out of the secret chamber now, and I will not haggle with you. When Yiqing Luo heard that, she burst out laughing, but we're very interested in this secret room. As soon as he finished speaking, Yiqing Luo's figure suddenly flashed. His body was already close to Yen Mu. Her 5 fingers moved and clasped Yen Mu's neck. The speed was so fast that Yen Mu could not react at all. Yen Mu's throat tightened. You are too noisy. Yiqing Luo chuckled as she stuffed a pill into Yen Mu's mouth. Immediately, he released Yen Mu. Yen Mu's legs went limp on the ground, his hands wrapped around his neck, and he vomited desperately. However, no matter how hard he tried, nothing came out. Don't waste your energy. The poison pill will melt once it enters your mouth, and at the fastest speed, it will integrate into your limbs and bones. Other than the antidote, there is no other way to force the poison pill out. Yiqing Luo wiped her hands and took elegant steps back to Dmo Xian's side. Her eyes were filled with a sly smile. My poison pill. You should be very clear about it. If you are obedient, I can give you the antidote. Yen Mu's hands, which were pressed on the stairs, curled into fists one by one. He was very clear. Chapter 32:07. Because he knew it too well. He didn't even have the leeway to resist. Despicable. Yen Mu roared angrily from the bottom of his heart. Yiqing Luo's pink lips deepened. Let's go, continue to walk down and enjoy the secret of the Palace of Obscurity. Yen Mu glared at Yiqing Luo angrily. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. The drawn-out sound entered Yen Mu's ears. He quivered and stood up abruptly. If you want to follow, then follow. He started walking again and walked down the stairs. That circle of stairs was really dizzying. Yen Mu walked slowly and stopped from time to time to hold his forehead and shake his head. After walking for a long time, he had only walked down half of the stairs. If Yiqing Luo still couldn't tell that Si Yin Mu was deliberately delaying time, then she must have a hole in her brain. When Si Yin Mu stopped again, Yiqing Luo's cold voice came from behind. Do you want to walk down by yourself, or I'll kick you down? Si Yin Mu's hand that was holding his forehead suddenly froze. Yiqing Luo held Dmo Xian's arm and slowly walked towards Si Yin Mu. It seems that you prefer violence. Saying that, she slowly lifted her foot. Si Yin Mu's face stiffened and took a few steps back in horror, almost falling down the stairs. I'll go. He staggered and walked down the stairs quickly. After Si Yin Mu cooperated, he quickly walked out of the staircase. After the stairs, there was a long corridor. The putrid stench of decay was even more pungent. Even Si Yin Mu couldn't help but cover his nose. But what was even more shocking was that, on both sides of the long corridor, there were barbs hooked to rotten corpses. TSK. The Palace of Obscurity's hobby is really strange, actually, like to hide corpses. Yiqing Luo calmly glanced at the corpses on both sides and clicked her tongue. Si Yin Mu didn't even dare to look at both sides of the long corridor. He really couldn't figure out. A woman could actually face such a disgusting thing without batting an eyelid. Simply not like a lady. President Si, why did you come to this place which is filled with corpses? Yiqing Luo asked with a smile. Si Yin Mu's face was ugly. Because of the smell of the air and the yin qi, his face was pale. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes. Don't want the antidote anymore. You. Si Yin Mu gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. You already know what is inside. Why ask when you already know the answer? Where is it? We don't know. Yiqing Luo blinked her long eyelashes innocently, smiling innocently. Si Yin Mu's face froze. He gritted his teeth and continued. Stop pretending. Xiang Xingfa said that you know what undead corpse puppets are, and how to deal with them. How could you not know what this place is? Yiqing Luo shrugged her shoulders and put on a look of sudden realization. Oh? So this is where the undead puppets are made. You. Si Yin Mu finally understood Yiqing Luo's motive. Yiqing Luo wanted him to reveal the secret of the secluded palace to her personally. Despicable. Treacherous. Si Yin Mu secretly cursed in his heart. His eyes were filled with coldness. Do you think you can escape from here? As long as the undead corpse puppets are activated, even if you can deal with the undead corpse puppets, you can't deal with all the undead puppets here. Chapter 32:08. Si Yin Mu lowered his eyelids and stopped talking. In his heart, there was another plan. He turned around and walked forward quickly without looking sideways. Yiqing Luo snorted lightly, pulled Dmo Xian, and followed up. That trace of calculation in Si Yin Mu's eyes naturally did not escape Yiqing Luo's eyes. Regarding Si Yin Mu's idea, Yiqing Luo could more or less guess. The disciples who were guarding outside the secret chamber gave Si Yin Mu a time limit, which meant that within the time it took to burn a stick of incense, Si Yin Mu did not leave the secret chamber. They would definitely come in and drive them out of the secret chamber. Si Yin Mu had been delaying the time. He was probably trying to make use of the time to let those disciples enter the secret chamber. In this way, they would be able to discover that they had entered the secret chamber. His wishful thinking was indeed successful. What bad idea are you thinking of again? Dmo Xian's gentle and magnetic voice was whispered into her ears. He lowered his eyes. In his pupils, there was a reflection of the young lady's stunning face. The young lady's curved eyebrows overflowed with a slight craftiness. As he looked, the corners of his lips unconsciously rose into an arc. What bad idea. This is called resourceful. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes slyly. The man's slender fingers gently tapped on her forehead. After a while, they walked through the long corridor and an arched stone door appeared in front. Si Yin Mu quickly rushed towards the stone door. His face was filled with unconcealable joy. Yiqing Luo's lips curled. At the moment when Si Yin Mu was about to push open the stone door, she clasped his shoulder. The strength of her 5 fingers increased. Si Yin Mu only felt that there was a stream of air in his internal organs, constantly stirring up all the organs in his body. His forehead broke out in cold sweat due to the pain. Yiqing Luo's lips curled up slightly as she slowly loosened her hand. President C, don't say that I didn't give you a chance. Whether you want the antidote or not, it depends on your next performance. Yin Mu's eyes protruded from the pain. That seemingly elegant and handsome face was distorted and extremely ugly. He pressed his hands against his chest and then his abdomen. The pain in his body was almost unbearable. I will be obedient. I will be obedient. Yin Mu's painful voice was broken. Yiqing Luo laughed softly. The pain in Yin Mu's body at this moment calmed down. He leaned against the stone door and panted heavily. His whole body was drenched in cold sweat, soaking his robe. Push the door open and go in. Yiqing Luo ordered. Yin Mu's legs were still trembling, and the strength he used to push the door was weak. Yiqing Luo's gaze swept across. He exerted force and pushed the stone door open. What came at him was an endless black aura. Energy billowed in the air. The cold breath made Yin Mu shiver and hugged his arms. His entire body was trembling, and he shuddered as he walked in. Through the floating black chi, Yiqing Luo could vaguely see that behind the stone door was an extremely spacious refining place. On the right stood several defective, undead corpse puppets. Every single one of them was stiff and straight. At a glance, there were probably over 1,000 of them. On the other side, there was a refining platform. On the high platform, corpses were hanging from iron hooks in the sky. Below, there was an extremely vigorous fire. Yiqing Luo estimated that there were at least 200 or so corpses hanging in the air. That was the place to refine the undead corpse puppets. Chapter 3209. Those cultivators were all sitting cross-legged around the refining platform with their eyes shut, constantly depleting the mental energy in their bodies. There were a few cultivators whose faces were sometimes pale, sometimes ashen. What's more, some cultivators' faces were pitch black, as their features twisted in pain, as though there was some kind of energy surging in their bodies. But they still persisted in transferring their mental energy. What was going on? Look carefully, the burning fire below the corpse. She heard a man's voice reminding her. Yiqing Luo's gaze turned and fell onto those burning flames. Initially, she didn't notice anything wrong. Just as she was about to retract her gaze and ask DMO Xian, a glint flashed across her eyes. That flame, the arc of the burning, was not normal. No, not right. That wasn't an ordinary flame. Yiqing Luo's expression suddenly turned grave. That burning, dancing flame arc. It was like a human, struggling in pain, struggling with all his might. Vaguely, a burst of thick black yin-chi rose from the flame bit by bit, merging into the corpse hanging in midair. Yiqing Luo grabbed DMO Xian's arm tightly. That's not a flame. That's a human's soul. Human's resentment. That's right. DMO Xian replied solemnly. The refining of the corpse puppet is to use the human's soul and resentment, and through a special secret method, the corpse puppet becomes a killing weapon. For these defective products, the Palace of Darkness actually used the human soul as food. Yiqing Luo clenched her fists in shock. This kind of heartless action, don't tell me the upper realm and the so-called heavenly way, which maintains the realm's balance, doesn't care. It's not that they don't care, but they don't have time to care. DMO Xian touched her hair. The distance between the upper realm and lower realm is too far. If it wasn't for the strong energy which attracted the attention of the upper realm's balance historian, then they would rush over. But the mastermind of the Palace of Darkness has grasped the boundary of this energy. If it wasn't for someone reporting, the upper realm's balance historian would not be able to detect this matter. This was the so-called, the mountain is high and the emperor is far away. What can they do to me? The most important point is the identity of the person behind the scenes. There's a possibility that even the balance historian can't control it. DMO Xian's voice sunk. Now, we can only wait for Qingwu to bring the news. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips as her eyes stared intently at that seemingly excited, but in actual fact, it was struggling in pain. Her slender fingers curled up one by one. She was not a saint. However, they definitely couldn't be like the gloomy palace, killing the innocent. At the same time, she was determined to destroy this base. While the two were talking, Si and Mu had already walked in. His voice was trembling as he whispered something to a man in a black robe who walked out from the dark. Soon, Si and Mu handed the token to the black-robed man. His hands were shaking nonstop. The black-robed man laughed mockingly. I don't know what the higher-ups are thinking, sending a coward like you to ask for the corpse puppet. With your guts, do you think you can successfully bring the corpse puppet out? Chapter 32:10. The black-robed man sneered. After taking the token, he turned around and walked towards the direction where the corpse puppets were placed. Si and Mu was angry and annoyed. He glanced at Yi Qing Luo's direction from time to time. From his eyes, Yi Qing Luo could read his thoughts. Si and Mu was pondering whether to tell the black-robed man about their whereabouts. Yi Qing Luo's eyes flashed a trace of evil smile. She looked up and winked at DMO Xian. DMO Xian held her wrist tightly as he lowered his voice and whispered into her ear, "Follow me closely and be obedient." "Yes, my future husband." Yi Qing Luo nodded with a smile. DMO Xian's pupils shrank slightly, and the smile in his eyes deepened. "Get rid of those 3 words and say it again." Yi Qing Luo raised her charming eyes slightly and smiled mischievously. "What 3 words? Little naughty." DMO Xian's tone was full of pampering. Perhaps the laughter of the two of them stung Si Yin Mu. When the black-robed man pointed out a group of corpse puppets, Si Yin Mu suddenly rushed towards the black-robed man. He grabbed the black-robed man tightly with both hands. The black-robed man frowned sinisterly and wanted to shake him off. Si Yin Mu said in a trembling voice, There's someone? Hurry, call someone, get lost." The black-robed man was annoyed by his stuttering. The black-robed man pushed Si Yin Mu away impatiently. "I don't like you." "Why?" "Old Elephant can't satisfy you. And now you're seducing me when he's not around?" "Oh, I'm not interested in a tender young lad like you." The black-robed man's mouth was full of disdain. "These are the corpse puppets you want. Hurry up and take them away. Don't dirty my eyes." Si Yin Mu's eyes turned red after being rebutted. Since he followed Old Elephant Saint Law, he had not suffered too much grievance. Moreover, no one would point fingers at him or humiliate him in front of him. Si Yin Mu was very clear. DMO Xian and Yi Qing Luo, who were hiding behind the stone door, must have heard his words. With Yi Qing Luo's vicious temper, she would not let him off. The more anxious he was, the angrier he was. The more he spoke, the more he stammered. It was impossible to hear what he was saying. The black-robed man, who was annoyed, directly controlled the corpse puppet and walked towards the direction of Si Yin Mu. The rotten smell of the defective corpse puppets had yet to be dispelled. There were still bits of rotten flesh falling off his body. Si Yin Mu was frightened and quickly retreated. He staggered and fell to the ground. The black-robed man burst into laughter. "Ha! I really don't know what Old Elephant likes about you. Is it your kung fu in that aspect? I like to see how you're going to bring these puppets out." Si Yin Mu was ashamed and annoyed. He struggled on the ground, trying to get up and run away. But suddenly he clutched his chest. His face contorted. He curled up on the ground. The black-robed man was slightly startled by Si Yin Mu's sudden change. "Hey, pretty boy, don't play any tricks." "Oh!" Si Yin Mu groaned. His body twisted into a ball and trembled nonstop. The black-robed man furrowed his brows. This gigolo was the person whom Captain Elephant loved dearly. If something really happened to him, perhaps Captain Elephant would blame it on him. The black-robed man ordered the corpse puppets to stop and quickly stepped forward to support Si Yin Mu. Chapter 32:11. Don't worry about how to bring these corpse puppets out. There was even a hint of a smile in that voice. Leave these undead corpse puppets to us. The black-robed man paused, raised his head abruptly, and looked towards the direction of the voice. "Who is it?" At the stone door, 2 figures walked in slowly. The young lady's red dress was like fire, enchanting like a painting, as if she was stepping on the flame. Her beauty made one sink into it. The man's purple robe billowed, peerless, like a god, with an extraordinary temperament that made one sink into it. This pair of golden boy and jade girl standing together was simply too pleasing to the eyes. But now was not the time to be pleasing to the eyes. The black-robed man shouted in shock. "Who are you people?" Yi Ching Luo smiled extremely brilliantly. "We are the people who will end you." The black-robed man lowered his head and looked at Si Yin Mu, who was lying limp at his feet, lifted his leg suddenly, and kicked him. "Is it you? You brought them in." Si Yin Mu was poisoned by the poisonous pill. His internal organs were in pain, and by the black-robed man's angry kick. He coughed out a big mouthful of blood. No, it's them." Si Yin Mu wanted to explain, but his throat was full of blood, stimulated and unable to spit out a complete sentence. "It doesn't matter who brought us in." Yi Ching Luo smiled sweetly. "What's important is you. You will disappear together with this secret chamber." The black-robed man suddenly retreated, called the corpse puppets by the side, and rushed towards Yi Ching Luo. Bam! Dmo Xian's sleeves waved. A wave of profound wave dispersed the yin qi in the air. That wave, like ripples, spread out circle after circle. Everywhere it went, the corpse puppets all fell to the ground. This powerful force made the black-robed man extremely shocked. He tried his best to restrain his inner fear. "Don't waste your energy. These corpse puppets are unbeatable." The black-robed man roared as he dodged into the corpse puppets. But the next moment, he was not only shocked, he was completely dumbstruck, and his heart was filled with fear. Because the corpse puppets that fell to the ground had no intention of getting up. No, this was impossible. The black-robed man widened his eyes and waved his arm. Another dozen or so corpse puppets swarmed forward. This time, Dmo Xian didn't even move his sleeves. The Xian wave in the air had already sliced those corpse puppets into two. Dong dong dong. The undead corpse puppets fell to the ground. The black-robed man widened his eyes and stared at the undead puppet on the ground. He did not stand up. The undead corpse puppet did not stand up again. What was going on? Aren't undead corpse puppets immortal? Impervious to swords and spears, and impervious to fire and water. Who was that man? It could be seen that he hadn't even used his full strength. But he was already this powerful. If they were to really fight, all the undead corpse puppets in this secret chamber might not be a match for him. The black-robed man was incomparably appalled as he stared at Dmo Xian with a gaze filled with fear. Besides the 10-plus profounders who were still refining corpses and puppets, the entire chamber was filled with countless profounders. He was the only one left in charge of the undead puppets. He had to spread the news of the secret chamber being invaded. The black-robed man's eyeballs turned, and his vision suddenly fell onto Yi Ching Luo. Looking at that young lady, she had been hiding behind the man. She looked young and extremely delicate. That man couldn't move. Chapter 32:12. As long as he could control that young lady, the man would definitely surrender obediently. The black-robed man made up his mind. His vision swept past the dead corpse puppets beside him. Once again, he controlled the dense dead corpse puppets to attack Dmo Xian. After that, he controlled a wave of dead corpse puppets to quietly approach Yi Ching Luo's direction. The black-robed man's speed was very fast. Under the cover of the dead corpse puppets, speedily nearing Yi Ching Luo's back, the black-robed man's eyes were filled with viciousness. And as he gradually neared, the young lady apparently hadn't discovered his existence. She was still hiding behind the man, blinking her eyes and looking cute as she stared at the undead corpse puppets that were charging at her. The black-robed man, who was only thinking of capturing the young lady, was full of confidence, as though he had forgotten. If she was really a pushover after seeing such terrifying dead corpse puppets, how could her expression not change and remain indifferent? Under the cover of the dead corpse puppets, the black-robed man's fingers were like an eagle's claw, fiercely clawing towards the young lady. Just at this moment, that young lady who had her back facing him, with an adorable look, suddenly raised her pink lips as her curly, long, thick eyelashes, like butterfly wings, fluttering lightly, curving into a crafty cold arc. The black-robed man only felt a chill down his spine. His hand was pierced through by an icy cold sharp weapon. Immediately, a majestic, profound energy, imposing manner, pressed down directly. Ah! The black-robed man cried out miserably. The dead corpse puppets, which were blocking in front of him, were smashed into pieces under a ray of blazing, profound energy. And he fell heavily onto the ground from the aftershock of the profound energy. Before he could react, one of the young lady's feet stepped heavily on his chest. You did it on purpose. The black-robed man spat out a mouthful of blood, trembling as he pointed at Yiqing Luo, his eyes wide open. Yiqing Luo closed the glower flame fan and pressed against her lower lip, smiling evilly. What did I do on purpose? Looking at Yiqing Luo's smirk, no matter how stupid the black-robed man was, he knew that he had been tricked. This lady was not as weak as she looked on the surface. The majestic, profound energy released earlier was at least sky profound and above. Damn it! Since when did the lower realm have a profound practitioner at the sky profound realm? Just at this moment. Suddenly, orderly footsteps sounded outside the stone door. The deep voice of the secluded darkness palace disciple rang out. What's going on? Didn't I say that you have to come out within the time it takes for an incense stick to burn? What are you still doing inside? The black-robed man's eyes lit up, and he suddenly shouted, Men, guards, the secret chamber has been invaded. The disciples of the secluded darkness palace stopped in their tracks and charged forward. There were only 6 disciples who came in. She saw Si and Mu curled up on the ground. The black-robed man was stepped on by a young girl. When the ground was filled with the severed limbs of the dead corpse puppets, their faces were filled with terror. Almost subconsciously, the few of them quickly retreated. You're already here and still want to run? Yiqing Luo laughed lightly. Her long and narrow eyes flashed with brilliant lights. Her fingertips twitched. A few silver threads shot out from the glowing flame fan and blocked the feet of the secluded darkness palace disciples. However, after the black-robed man shouted that the secret chamber was invaded, 2 of the disciples went out to report the news. For a time, the disciples who stayed at the base rushed in this direction. In less than half an incense's time, Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian were already surrounded by the disciples of the secluded darkness palace. Among these disciples, Yiqing Luo's vision was fixed at a spot behind the crowd. She saw a familiar figure. Black robe, black veil covering her face, petite figure. Chapter 32:13. Little Phone. Her base in secluded darkness palace. She indeed had another motive for being in Valley Wind City's safety zone. Yiqing Luo recalled the scene of Matron Wang grabbing her tightly, not allowing her to leave the safety zone not long ago. She probably listened to Little Feng's instructions to ask Matron Wang to keep her in the safety zone. Most likely, that Matron Yang was killed by Little Feng. Otherwise, Matron Yang wouldn't be so shocked and in disbelief before she died. Killing Matron Yang, just to stop her from leaving the safety zone? What are you trying to do? Yiqing Luo's gaze was like a torch as she stared straight at Little Feng's figure. Little Feng ignored her. Under the black veil, that pair of scorching eyes was obviously staring at the person beside Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo glanced sideways as she looked at the calm man and then looked at Little Feng. She squinted her eyes slightly. No? Dmo Xian tightened his grip on her slender waist as his brows creased slightly as he replied calmly. Amen. She was actually someone whom Dmo Xian knew? Could it be? She had sensed Little Feng's enmity from the first look. Was it because of Dmo Xian? A figure suddenly flashed past Yiqing Luo's mind. Fengling. Yiqing Luo's vision suddenly fell onto that black-robed lady as she stared at her without blinking. You're Fengling? Heh. The lady gave out a gentle laugh, faintly discernible as though it came from all directions. I've been discovered by you. The lady's voice was no longer hoarse and sharp as before, but had regained her crisp and clear voice. The lady slowly lifted the black veil on her face as she pulled open the black robe, which covered her head. The lady's stunning looks were revealed in front of everyone's eyes. That elegant and gentle face was so beautiful that it made one's soul swoon. But as she looked around, her temperament was like a snow mountain white lotus, aloof and unattainable. This face, if it wasn't Feng Ling, who else could it be? Yi Qing Luo's brows creased tightly as she stared vigilantly at the lady in front of her. Feng Ling, you actually joined the secluded darkness palace. Feng Ling's lips curled as she smiled gently. That pair of affectionate, beautiful eyes were still staring at Mo Xian's face in a daze. She stared at his face almost greedily. No, you didn't find me. It was Brother D. Feng Ling smiled, her eyes filled with joy. No matter what little Ling disguises herself as, Big Brother D can recognize little Ling at a glance. Little Ling is really happy. That undisguised naked gaze made Yi Qing Luo's expression sunk slightly. In that instant, the hand on his waist tightened its grip. He pinched her waist gently with his large and broad palm. He seemed to be comforting her. A man's cold voice floated above her head. Feng Ling, are you sure you want to join the Palace of Darkness? Wind Chime's eyes were watery, and she smiled beautifully. To be able to return to Big Brother D's side, I can give up on everything. There is no longer any uncertainty. I am already a member of Dark Abyss Palace. Nether Palace is the Imperial Palace's archenemy. So, Feng Ling, this is your own decision. Mo Xian's voice did not have the slightest fluctuation of emotions. For him, he didn't care whether Feng Ling joined the Palace of Darkness or not. He wouldn't show any mercy because of this. Chapter 32:14. You could try and see if I'll keep you in my heart. Mo Xian's gaze was calm and indifferent. Feng Ling was stunned by his gaze for a moment. From Mo Xian's gaze, she indeed didn't show any fluctuation in her emotions. As though, when facing her, she was just a stranger. Feng Ling had an intuition. Even if Mo Xian killed her, in his heart, there wouldn't be a place for her if she couldn't leave a mark that belonged to herself and his heart. How could she bear die? Feng Ling shuddered as she stared at Mo Xian. Brother D, do you really want to be so heartless? Heartless? Mo Xian's cold voice was chilly. You and I have never had any feelings before. How could you say that I'm heartless? Feng Ling staggered backwards a few steps. She stared at Mo Xian's expressionless handsome face. Staring. Suddenly, she laughed softly. As she laughed, she rocked back and forth. Her infatuated look made the surrounding Imperial Palace's disciples unconsciously moved away, not daring to get close to her. What a good never had feelings. Feng Ling choked with sobs as she laughed so hard that her chest was heaving up and down. I've loved you for more than 10 years in exchange for a never had feelings. Mo Xian, you're really ruthless, so ruthless. Her vision slowly fell onto Yi Qing Luo. Her eyes were filled with dense jealousy and unconcealable murderous intent. On what basis? The heartless Brother D only fell in love with this slut. On what basis? She was able to obtain Brother D's gentleness and love. Feng Ling's venomous gaze was like a sharp blade, fiercely cutting Yi Qing Luo's body. Move your eyes away. Mo Xian's icy cold voice rang. His long arm scooped and pulled Yi Qing Luo into his embrace. Using his body, he blocked Feng Ling's gaze. His attitude of holding a treasure in his hands made Feng Ling's eyes turn even redder. She suddenly laughed out loud. Yi Qing Luo, don't you want to know why I'm in the safety zone? Because those ordinary people are very stupid. It's very easy for them to be incited by me. It's very easy for them to listen to me. Windchime said sinisterly, I just spent some time to disguise myself, and those idiots really believed in me. They did whatever I told them to do. They're even more obedient than dogs. Do you know why I'm at the Palace of Darkness today? Because Valley Wind City could not be defended anymore. The South Water Continent was already in the hands of the Nether Palace. You can't stop it at all. Windling laughed madly. It was as if he could already see the destruction of the South Wave Continent. He saw the success of Abyss Palace. Windling's words made the other disciples of the Palace of Darkness laugh. Fengling laughed till she was panting. Suddenly she raised her hand and pointed at Yiqing Luo. Do you think that by infiltrating the base today, you can change the fact that the South Continent is going to be destroyed? No, you're wrong. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness will never lose. Capture these two trespassers alive. If we manage to capture him alive, the Palace Master will definitely reward us. Fengling shouted loudly. Following that, the long whip lashed out, taking the initiative to attack Yiqing Luo. Abyss Palace's disciples exchanged glances. Following that, they also flocked over, looking at the Abyss Palace's disciples who were swarming over from all directions, as well as Fengling, who was the first to make a move, but finally stopped, disappearing into the crowd. Chapter 32:15. Are you sure? Destroying the base will not change the truth? The young lady's cold voice was like an echo, reverberating in everyone's ears. Then why don't we try and see if we can change it? Following the young lady's last word, it was like a huge bell pounding heavily on everyone's hearts. The young lady's figure suddenly flashed, turning into a red shadow. Swoosh! A sound of breaking air was heard. Everyone's bodies, which were swarming towards Yiqing Luo, suddenly seemed to be obstructed by something, as they were not able to advance any further. What's this? What's blocking my leg? No. What's wrapping around my waist? Blood. I'm bleeding. Secluded Palace's disciples cried out anxiously. For a moment, everyone panicked. After meeting with this strange thing, they all wanted to retreat. But they turned around. They discovered that the path of retreat behind them was also blocked by an invisible thing. If they wanted to cross over forcefully, their skin would be cut open mysteriously as blood started to flow out. Something's wrong. Look, what's this? Suddenly, a Secluded Palace's disciple's hand grabbed onto something. His palm started to ooze blood. Droplets of blood seemed to form a thin line in midair. When the blood died even more, everyone then reacted to it. How was this a thin line? It was an extremely fine and indestructible silver thread. This silver thread could cut metal like mud and was as sharp as a blade. Just a slight touch. It could easily cut through robes, cut through skin, and directly embedded into flesh and blood. Secluded Palace's disciples felt a chill down their spines as they all stood rooted to the ground, not daring to move at all. The young lady's lips curled slightly as she gave an enchanting smile. Aren't you going to make a move? Come, attack together. Don't waste time. I still need to think of a way to blow up your base. You. Secluded Palace's disciples heard Yiqing Luo's unbridled words, as they were so infuriated that their necks turned red. However, in the face of the invisible sharp silver thread in front of him, he could not help but feel a chill run down his spine. They totally didn't know how to get close to Yiqing Luo. Fengling's gaze turned cold as she quickly retreated to the black-robed man's side, grabbing him. Quick! He controlled the undead puppets to attack them. The undead corpse puppets are not afraid of those invisible silver threads. It's no use. The undead puppets are useless to them. The black-robed man was already out of breath from Yiqing Luo's abuse, and after being pulled by Fengling in such a rough manner, he could only feel the blood in his throat surging. When wind chimes heard him stutter, she impatiently slapped the black-robed man's face. Shut up. Immediately control the undead corpse puppets for me, or I'll throw you over. The black-robed man was slapped so hard that he spat out the blood in his throat. Coincidentally, it sprayed on Wind Chime's face. The viscous liquid caused Fengling's eyes to be filled with killing intent. She raised her sleeve and wiped off the blood on her face. The black-robed man had no choice but to control the corpse puppets to surround them. Tang Beiyuan had reforged the gourd flame fan, and the silver strands had been infused with nether mental power. The corpse puppet was not afraid of the pain and forcefully pulled on the silver threads. Numerous limbs were cut off by the silver threads as they rolled onto the ground. One by one, the undead corpse puppets fell onto the ground. This scene made the Secluded Palace's disciples feel fear rising in their hearts. Chapter 32:16. In the hearts of the secluded palace's disciples. Undead puppets were the secluded palace's secret weapon, impenetrable by swords and spears, impervious to fire and water. It was an essential item for robbing, killing, and robbing. But the undead puppets, actually, were hooked by this invisible silver thread and fell onto the ground, unable to get up. Where was the promised impenetrable by swords and spears? Where was the promised immortality? Fairy tales were all lies? The secluded palace's disciples' hearts collapsed. When they were facing Yi Qing Luo, they were subconsciously filled with fear. This fear, their morale was greatly reduced. No matter how many people they had, they were bound to lose. Feng Ling hid behind the crowd as her features twisted. What are you guys in a daze for? Take the chance that the undead puppets are blocking those silver threads and attack. As long as we restrain the both of them, what's there to be afraid of? The secluded palace's disciples were not like those commoners in the safety zone. They could allow Feng Ling to criticize them by the side. The atmosphere was tense, and no one was willing to die. A lady hiding behind the crowd was fine, but she was still shouting behind the crowd. Instantly, a few secluded palace's disciples grabbed Feng Ling's arm, not showing any tenderness towards the fairer sex as they pulled her to the front. Aren't you going to attack? All right, I'll let you trash go first. In the face of life and death, beauty and whatnot were all fleeting clouds. Moreover, most of the disciples who joined the secluded palace were here for power. No matter how beautiful Feng Ling was, they would not show tenderness towards the fairer sex. Moreover, Feng Ling's heart belonged to Di Emotian. She had been protected by the imperial palace's granny since young. Absolutely cannot do it. That kind of action of using her beauty to ingratiate herself to the men. Usually, Feng Ling put on an aloof look, thinking that she was unreachable. This bunch of secluded palace's ordinary disciples were not fit to talk to her. Because of this, Feng Ling wasn't popular among the dark forces. Feng Ling was forcefully dragged to the front. Her feet stepped on the ground full of broken limbs. Her face was so twisted that it was almost hideous. Let go. Let go. Who dares to touch me? Do you know who I am? If anything happens to me, my granny will absolutely not let you off. Feng Ling struggled with all her might, try to break free from those people's grip. But how could her power compare to that of the disciples of the Palace of Darkness? Just as Feng Ling was about to be pulled and hit Yi Qing Luo's silver threads in the air, suddenly there was a loud explosion outside. Soon after, the man shouted in panic, "Not good, not good." The disciples of Imperial Palace had invaded the base. Quick, hurry up and let the undead corpse puppets block it. A disciple of the Imperial Palace? Why did he come at this time? This is premeditated. It's over. A disciple of the Imperial Palace? Why were the disciples of the Imperial Palace here? How could they find the location of our base? Most of the disciples and undead corpse puppets were taken away by Captain Elephant. What should we do? The Emperor Palace's disciples cried out in disbelief. They would never believe that this wasn't premeditated by the Imperial Palace. While most of the disciples were taken out by Captain Elephant, these two people had snuck into the secret chamber to attract their attention. They summoned most of the disciples who had stayed in the base to gather in the secret room. The Imperial Palace's disciples started to pounce ferociously. They totally had no way to resist at all. No way. We absolutely cannot sit still and wait for death. Chapter 32:17. The Nether Palace's disciples started to panic. Even the restraints on Feng Ling were loosened. Feng Ling screamed as she struggled to break free from the few of them. Her petite body suddenly disappeared into the crowd, and she ran away. At this moment, the disciples outside brought news. The entire secret room was in a state of panic. Feng Ling had escaped, and naturally no one cared about it. But Yi Qing Luo, who had been paying attention to Feng Ling, felt a little strange, if she didn't remember wrongly. Feng Ling's profound grade wasn't low. But from a moment Feng Ling appeared to, when she made a move and was forcefully pulled away, she didn't sense any profound qi fluctuation from Feng Ling's body. recalling the time in Valley Wind City. Towards Feng Ling's approach, she didn't even notice it. She also didn't sense the slightest fluctuation of profound qi from that little Feng. What was going on? Since Feng Ling joined the Nether Palace, making use of them was to obtain promises or benefits from them. How could it be possible to lose her profound grade? Yiqing Luo looked at DMO Xian's side profile. She wondered if a Xian had discovered Feng Ling's abnormality. DMO Xian glanced sideways and met her gaze. He raised his palm and caressed her head. The warmth in his eyes was filled with love. She shook off the other thoughts in her mind as she looked at the Imperial Palace's disciples who had already rushed into the secret room. Let's go. Let's destroy this place to refine the puppets and save these souls. Yiqing Luo pulled DMO Xian's hand as she walked towards the direction of the puppet refining vessel. When the Nether Palace's disciples heard this, they immediately wanted to stop them. But behind them, the Imperial Palace's disciples had already swarmed forward. Both parties were entangled in a fight. How could they possibly stop those two figures who were rushing towards the vessel? The 10 overcultivators who were sitting cross-legged beside the vessel had no way to stop their refining when they heard the fighting sounds. Once they stopped, they would be swallowed by the resentment of those souls in the vessel. There was a possibility that they would be annihilated. They could only clench their teeth and hang on as fast as they could to refine this batch of puppets. Just at this moment, the dozen or so profound practitioners clearly felt a chill that covered the sky and covered the earth as it pressed down on them. A cold and gloomy aura lingered around them. He could vaguely hear the clear and melodious voice of a young girl. Although you were forced by the Palace of Darkness to do such a heartless thing, but what you did is what you did. In order to survive, your hands were stained with too much blood. All the profound practitioners felt their hearts tighten. Then, the second half of the young woman's words rang out. Therefore, take your sins with you, and enter hell with the souls that you have refined. You must atone for your sins. A few profound practitioners suddenly opened their eyes. What entered his eyes was a beautiful face that resembled that of a fairy from the ninth heaven who had descended to the mortal world. The young girl's eyes were cold and emotionless. Their eyes widened in shock. He was absent-minded. The resentment in the containers instantly corroded their internal organs. The profound practitioners convulsed in pain. The next moment, they felt as if their bodies were being burned by a raging fire. Even his soul was being torn apart. They realized that they had been thrown into a refining vessel. Together with the souls and resentment that were being refined, they burned in the raging fire. Rumble. The last sound they heard was a deafening explosion. Chapter 32:18. There was no turning back for the base of Dark Palace in the South Water Continent. At this time, outside Valley Wind City, an extremely difficult battle was going on. Countless dead corpse puppets madly attacked the city gate. The disciples of Dark Palace, the soldiers in armor, and a group of people in the clothes of the Imperial Palace were facing each other with swords and swords, murderous intent soaring to the sky. Endless dark force soared to the sky. The war drums roared, and smoke rose everywhere. Endless killing dyed this piece of land red. Xiang Shengfa sat on the back of a huge tiger-shaped magical beast, squinting his eyes and carefully watching the battle. He thought that today's quiet attack would definitely be able to take down Valley Wind City. Unexpectedly, the old guy in Valley Wind City had long been prepared. It was like he had long known that the Dark Palace would attack Valley Wind City at this time. This thought made Xiang Shengfa's heart a little confused. He always felt that something was about to happen. However, the disciples of Dark Palace and more than 500 dead corpse puppets had already arrived at the battlefield outside Valley Wind City. It was impossible to turn around and leave now. Even if he wanted to, the Palace of Gloomy Darkness probably wouldn't agree either. So, Xiang Shengfa could only bite the bullet. However, he didn't expect that in this Valley Wind City. Not only the soldiers of the South Water Continent who were struggling at death's door, there were also the disciples from the Imperial Palace. Those disciples of the Imperial Palace had obviously been waiting on the side. When they made their move, they swarmed up. if it weren't for the obstruction of the disciples of the imperial palace. This battle would never have lasted until now. Xiang Shengfa's face darkened, staring at the disciples of Dark Palace who couldn't gain the upper hand at all. He became more and more anxious in his heart. Today's battle, the Dark Palace absolutely couldn't lose. Otherwise, he couldn't explain to the people above, and it was very likely that he would lose his life because of this. In his ears, there was still the deafening battle cry. There were people on both sides, constantly falling down. The attack of the dead corpse puppets didn't reverse the situation at all. Xiang Shengfa's eyes kept looking in another direction. He didn't know when his little Moo would send the other dead corpse puppets over. Captain Elephant, an old woman who claims to have been instructed by Lady Xiao Feng, wishes to see you. A disciple of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness stepped forward and spoke in a low voice. If it was a normal day, encountering such ordinary people, the people from Gloomy Palace would definitely be killed in one slash. However, during the fierce battle, the old woman said that she was instructed by Miss Xiaofeng to help them win the battle. On top of that, there was indeed not the slightest fluctuation of profound energy on the old woman's body. In the end, the secluded Darkness Palace disciple decided to report it. Xiaofeng, who was it? Xiang Shengfa frowned. The Palace of Darkness disciple immediately repeated the old lady's words. Xiang Shengfa's frown deepened. This could very well be a trap. Then, the disciple of secluded Darkness Palace made a throat-slitting gesture. No hurry. Xiang Shengfa raised his hand. Call her over. Let's hear what she has to say. Not long after, a disciple of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness brought an old man who was walking unsteadily. Under the smoke of war, the old man was shivering. His wrinkled old face was full of fear and fear. Why are you looking for me? Xiang Shengfa purposely released his power to oppress the old woman. Chapter 32:19. We are the citizens of Valley Wind City. We can secretly help you to open the door at the back of the city, so that you can sneak into Valley Wind City and kill those soldiers. The old lady's words made Xiang Shengfa's eyes lit up. Is what you said true? Absolutely true. The old lady nodded her head vigorously. You are the citizens of Valley Wind City. Why do you want to help our Palace of Darkness? Xiang Shengfa asked suspiciously. The old lady's eyes flashed a sinister look. Today's Valley Wind City soldiers have been bewitched by that demoness called Yiqing Luo. In order to please that demoness, the soldiers have no intention to let us ordinary citizens live on. If we want to live, we can only think of a way ourselves. As she said that, she raised her head and looked at Xiang Shengfa with a hopeful look. Miss Xiaofeng said that as long as we are willing to help you take over the South Continent, you will protect our lives. Who is this Xiaofeng that you mentioned? Xiang Shengfa narrowed his eyes. The old lady was stunned. Miss Xiaofeng said that she is especially familiar with you. She even asked me to send her regards to young Master C. Xiang Shengfa's eyes sunk. Xiaofeng, could it be Fengling? Although Xiang Shengfa had his doubts, but looking at Palace of Darkness, there was no way to break through. After thinking for a moment, he decided to believe this old lady for once. An old lady without any profound chi. She wouldn't dare to play any tricks. All right, I promise you. As long as you open the back door of the city and let us sneak in, you will be the heroes of Palace of Darkness. I guarantee that your days in Palace of Darkness will be much better than in the South Continent. Xiang Shengfa's lips curled into an evil smile. Coincidentally, Palace of Darkness needed a batch of fresh fodder. Although these people's souls were a little ordinary, but at least it could increase the strength of the puppets. The old lady couldn't tell what Xiang Shengfa was thinking. Just hearing that they would become heroes, she was already nodding her head in joy. Heroes. That also meant that there was a possibility that they could become an official. The old lady was extremely excited. Then I will go back and tell everyone. Wait here. We will open the door immediately. The old woman sneaked back to Goofing City. At this time, those who could fight were already fighting on the front lines. No one noticed the old woman's figure. However, when the old woman secretly returned to Valley Wind City, Her sneaky appearance attracted the attention of the soldiers who were anxiously watching the battle from afar, who were recuperating in the inn. Why are the people still walking around in the midst of war? The soldiers who were recuperating looked strangely at the soldiers beside them. Why does Granny Wong look so sneaky? The soldiers who were recuperating looked at each other. After a while, old Mistress Wong walked out of the safe zone again. She was carrying a large vat with several broken bowls hanging from it. Everyone, you've all worked hard. It's all thanks to you that we're all well protected. I don't know what else I can do for you all, but I can only brew a cup of hot tea for you all at this time. Old Maid Wong smiled at the soldiers guarding the gate. The soldiers naturally did not suspect anything. He took the bowl and drank a few mouthfuls. Old Maid Wong carried the vat and walked towards the entrance of the inn. Chapter 32:20. The soldiers who were recuperating pretended to drink the hot tea. But in fact, they poured the hot tea aside when Old Maid Wong was not paying attention. Old Maid Wong was an ordinary person, so naturally she could not see the soldiers' movements. She thought they had all drunk the hot tea. Then she walked to the soldiers who were still staying in Valley Wine City with a big jar in her arms. After that, she returned to the safe zone. But after a while, the two soldiers who were guarding the gate of the safe zone fell down in a daze. Seeing this, the soldiers who were recuperating at the gate immediately pretended to faint on the ground. The soldiers opened their eyes. Then they saw the gate of the safe zone was opened. Old Maid Wong stuck her head out. After seeing the two soldiers lying on the ground, she smiled. Then she looked in the direction of the inn. Several soldiers immediately closed their eyes. Old Maid Wong's voice came. They have all fallen. Let's go there now. Soon after, a large wave of civilians walked out of the safe zone one after another. At a glance, there were at least 100 people. They were obviously in a very good mood. They could not hide their smiles. The direction where more than 100 people were going, the soldiers who pretended to faint suddenly felt their hearts tremble. These commoners, could it be that they were no way? The soldiers already had a guess in their hearts, but they still did not want to believe the guess they had. But looking at the direction where the people were going, they did not dare to bet on this trust. One of the soldiers who was the least injured struggled to support his bandaged leg and limped toward the direction of the city gate. He had to tell the general about the people's actions. At this time, Old Maid Wong came to the back door of the city with a group of people. She knocked hard on the back door 3 times according to the agreement with Holy Technique of Elephant. Soon, she got a response from Holy Technique of Elephant. Old Maid Wong looked happy and called the people behind her. Come on, open the back door with me. Don't let those soldiers find out. The back door was closed very tightly, and the 3 wooden bars on the door were extremely heavy. It took a lot of effort for the group of people. Only then could he open the back door without making too much noise. At the door, a row of tall corpse puppets stood there expressionlessly. Behind the undead puppets were a group of disciples with their weapons raised high. When the crowd of commoners saw the row of corpse puppets in front of them and the rotten flesh on their faces falling off, their faces turned pale with fright, and they hurriedly retreated. Xiang Xingfa was behind the disciples of Gloomy Palace. He carefully observed the situation inside the back door. He had thought that this might be a trap. He purposely placed the corpse puppet in front of him. From the looks of it, this group of commoners had really rebelled. Xiang Xingfa ordered his undead puppets to scout ahead. The group of monsters with rotten flesh on their faces and the stench of feces all over their bodies began to walk into the city. The commoners were so frightened that they wanted to scream. Shut up. All of you, shut up. If the Grand General finds out, our plan will fail. Old Maid Wong growled in a low voice. The commoners covered their mouths. He was so scared that his eyes turned red. One by one, their legs went soft, and they retreated to the sides as if they were escaping. The corpse puppets entered the city and walked for a long time. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. Chapter 32:21. Well done. Xiang Sheng Fa looked at Old Maid Wong with admiration and immediately ordered the secluded palace's disciples to investigate. The secluded palace's disciples carefully walked into the city. Their gazes searched around the city vigilantly. One of the secluded palace's disciples noticed the 2 soldiers lying on the ground at the back door. They went up to check. They had indeed fainted. Hearing this news, Xiang Shengfa was finally relieved. He waved his hand and allowed the secluded palace's disciples to enter Valley Wind City. The entire Valley Wind City was empty and in ruins. Xiang Shengfa's vision was fixed on the city gate, on those soldiers who were still fighting hard. The corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. This time, everyone in Valley Wind City couldn't escape. They wanted to take this opportunity to destroy Valley Wind City, completely occupy the South Continent, bring all these commoners to the base. Xiang Shengfa pointed at two people and ordered, "The rest, follow me and kill our way up the city walls of Valley Wind City. Whoever can take down that old fogey's head will be heavily rewarded." The secluded palace's disciples waved the weapons in their hands. In case they were discovered by the soldiers in Valley Wind City, they didn't dare to make a sound. But from the strength of their waving weapons and the expression on their faces, it was enough to tell the joy in their hearts. A group of commoners followed the two secluded palace's disciples and left. The others followed Xiang Shengfa and quickly headed towards the direction of the city walls. The soldier with leg injury who rushed over from the inn to report finally reached the bottom of the city walls. That originally bandaged leg was oozing blood. The situation was urgent, and the soldiers were working together to resist against the secluded palace. They didn't pay attention to the soldier with leg injury. Mo Yuing, who was left behind by Yiqing Luo in Valley Wind City, noticed the soldier with leg injury. She jumped down from the city walls, and her little hand grabbed the soldier's arm. Her flat eyes fixed on him. "Why did you come out? Your leg injury has split open." That flat voice, that strange, empty gaze. The soldier with the leg injury was shocked. Mo Yuing stiffly frowned and released his hand, pulling a distance between them. "Go back." The soldier with the leg injury came back to his senses and hurriedly shook his head. Something has happened." Mo Yuing blinked a few times. Her pair of cute and adorable eyes said, "What's the matter? Let's talk after the fight." "No, it's not that." The soldier with the leg injury hurriedly recounted the scene he had seen with the people just now in a concise manner. Then he hurriedly said, "I suspect the citizens might want to open the back door of the city and let the people from the Palace of Darkness in. If that's the case, we're in a situation where we're attacked from both sides. It's very dangerous." That group of white-eyed wolves, they actually did this. Obviously, these words were said in anger, but when they came out of Mo Yuying's mouth, they were actually words that did not have any fluctuations of emotion. Mo Yuying frowned. "Go back to the inn first, leave the rest to us." After saying that, her small body suddenly jumped. In the blink of an eye, the little girl, who looked like a pink dumpling, was already standing beside the general. The soldier stared in the direction where the little girl had disappeared and stared blankly for a long time. Actually, that little girl didn't know how to express her thoughts with her facial expressions. No matter how one looked at her, she was a very cute, very adorable young lady. Mo Yuing repeated the words of the injured soldier to the great general. When the general heard that, his face sunk. He immediately changed tactics and ordered the soldiers to defend the back door. But Chapter 32:22. Surround all the soldiers on the city wall. Xiang Shengfa's command was heard from behind. One by one, the undead corpse puppets rushed to the front at an extremely fast speed and surrounded the city walls. Fortunately, the soldier with the leg injury reported in time. Great General's command was timely. The moment the undead puppets rushed forward, the generals and soldiers were all fully prepared. But they weren't hurt by the undead puppets. Xiang Shengfa sat on the tiger beast's back as he squinted his eyes with a victorious posture. "Old man, you still want to resist at this stage?" He sneered. "Pincer attack. Even if you have the ability to transcend the heavens, you won't win this battle." The moment the great general saw Xiang Shengfa and the secluded palace's disciple appear, his face turned steely green. This meant that the soldier with the leg injury was right. That group of commoners whom they risked their lives to protect betrayed them, betrayed the South Continent. For the secluded palace, for the bunch of secluded palace who destroyed their homeland, They opened the city's back door. His heart was filled with anger. Most of it was the guilt towards those brothers who had died for the commoners. If it was possible, he really didn't want to care about the armor that he was wearing to serve the commoners, to kill those ingrates with his own hands, to comfort the souls of his brothers in heaven. Ha! Even the commoners are willing to rely on us. That shows how useless you are. They can't see any hope of survival from you. Old man, just surrender obediently. Xiangsheng Fa looked at the great general's furious expression and that black as charcoal expression. He was feeling more and more delighted. The great general spat fiercely as he stared solemnly at Xiangsheng Fa. Don't even think about it. Since you want this city to be stained with blood, then I shall fulfill your wish. Xiangsheng Fa sneered as he waved his hand. Pincer attack, attack. The great general's expression darkened as he swiftly ordered the soldiers to defend. This situation was really not friendly to the great general. Xiangsheng Fa entered Valleywind City. Their advantage instantly turned into a disadvantage. Under the pincer attack, even though they had the weapons which Yi Qing Luo left behind to fight against the undead puppets, that was already extremely taxing. Bright red blood stained the ground. It also dyed the armors of the soldiers red. The clothes of the imperial palace's disciples were dyed red. Gradually, the palace of gloomy darkness advantage increased. Xiang Xingfa was getting more and more smug. When Little Mumu brings another batch of undead puppets, the South Tide continent will completely belong to Dark Nether Palace. And a bunch of undead puppets? When the great general heard this, his face turned ashen. If another batch of undead puppets came, they definitely wouldn't be able to defend it, even with the help of the brave Emperor Palace's disciples. Perhaps Goofing City, it would be difficult for them to escape the fate of destruction. In his mind, the words of a young girl that the soldier had brought rang out again. The soldier's voice overlapped with the girl's. As long as you can defend Valleywind City, I guarantee that the South Tide continent will return to its former peace. The general's eyes flickered, looking at the sky full of bloody light in front of him. The disciples of the Dark Palace and the corpse puppets had already charged over. His heart felt like it was being heavily pressed by a huge rock. He was afraid he could not hold on any longer. What they couldn't hold on any longer? No way. On his shoulders, he was carrying the entire South Tide continent. Chapter 32:23. Suddenly, a pink figure flashed past in front of the great general. The little girl, who was dressed in pink, dashed towards the direction of the Elephant Saint technique in extremely fast speed. Miss Mo, the great general's expression congealed as he hurriedly shouted. This Mo Yuing was the Imperial Madam's good sister. If anything happened to Miss Mo, how could the Imperial Madam let him off? Mo Yuing didn't seem to hear the great general's shout. In a blink of an eye, she appeared in front of Xiangsheng Fa. Xiangsheng Fa only felt a gust of chilly wind. He flipped over and jumped up from the tiger beast's back. Bam! A pink furry ball hit nothing but air. However, that remnant might shook the fluctuations in the air, spreading out layer by layer like ripples. Xiangsheng Fa was stunned by this power. He frowned slightly as he stared at the little girl who was rushing over. This girl, who was she? Why, how could there be such a strong power? Yi Qing Luo, that wretched lass. Why were there so many strange people around her? Dodge! Mo Ying's mechanical voice rang calmly. That voice was so stiff that there wasn't any emotion. Xiangsheng Fa inexplicably felt his scalp go numb, especially when he met the little girl's pair of empty, beautiful eyes. The numbness on his scalp became more and more intense. Strange. It was too strange. Xiangsheng Fa's intuition told him. He absolutely couldn't go against this little girl. This little girl was so strange that compared to Yi Qing Luo, she was even scarier. But he didn't want to fight with Mo Yuing. But Mo Yuing had obviously set her sights on him. Xiangsheng Fa had no choice but to fight back. Kill. Take this chance to exterminate the dead corpse puppets. The great general understood Mo Ying's meaning and immediately ordered those 10 over soldiers who were holding weapons to exterminate the dead corpse puppets. without Xiang Sheng Fei's command. Those dead corpse puppets only knew how to follow the previous command. It was much easier for the soldiers to kill them. Both sides were entangled in battle again. Mo Ying's attacks were getting fiercer and fiercer. She stared at Xiang Sheng Fei indifferently. Qing Luo said to capture the leader first. Stop struggling. If you anger me, the consequences will be severe. Elephant Saint Technique swiftly evaded Mo Ying's two furry dumplings' attack as he unleashed his profound qi. Little girl, your ability is so strong. Why are you willing to submit to Yi Qing Luo? If you are willing to join the Palace of Gloomy Darkness, I guarantee that you will definitely shine. He carefully stared at Mo Ying as he tried to brainwash her. This little girl seemed to be inexperienced. If they could persuade him to surrender, then he killed it in one move. That would be easy, but unexpectedly, the little girl in front of him did not show any jealousy or any other expression as he had expected. A pair of empty eyes, completely devoid of emotion. Don't shine, don't give off heat, just be clear. Her voice was still as stiff as ever. Her slender fingers hooked onto the fluffy ball of powder hanging in front of her chest and flew out. Xiang Shengfa's face darkened. Zhang Xian moved his palms and began his counterattack. Suddenly, his body seemed to be controlled by a strange force, unable to move. The next moment, his chest was heavily smashed by those two fluffy balls of powder. Puffed, a big mouthful of blood spurted out from Xiang Shengfa's mouth. His body flew out and fell heavily onto the ground. The ground split open and he was embedded in the gravel. Xiang Shengfa was in so much pain that his face contorted. Chapter 32:24. At this moment, a gloomy voice suddenly appeared in Xiang Shengfa's mind. Trash, you can't even do such a small thing. What use do I have for you? The voice was so deep that it made people panic. The moment Xiang Shengfa heard the voice, his whole body stiffened. Even the pain in his body was thrown to the back of his mind. Palace master, he replied in a trembling voice in his mind. The gloomy voice continued. That woman called Mo Ying is not an ordinary person. Ordinary methods can't deal with her. Xiang Shengfa shuddered. Then, what do you think I should do, Palace Lord? Trash, the gloomy voice sneered. Although it was ethereal, Xiang Shengfa could feel a chill spreading on his scalp. Mo Ying's soul is strange. I'll lend this to you. There was a ding sound. Something hit Xiang Shengfa's face. If the mission fails again, I'll refine all the people of the dark forces into dead puppets. Palace master, Xiang Shengfa's lips trembled. He grabbed the thing on his face and said in his mind, Subordinate will obey Palace master's order. Only the sound of the wind responded to him. The chill also gradually disappeared. Xiang Shengfa suddenly sat up from the ground. He looked around. He didn't find any trace of Palace Master. That voice, where did it come from? Palace Master, is he here too? Xiang Shengfa grabbed the thing left by Palace Master. He endured the pain from Mo Ying's attack and raised his hand. He saw in his palm. He was holding a dagger in his hand. It was a pitch-black dagger with no other colors. It looked extremely strange. This dagger, what is it used for? Does Palace Master mean to use this dagger to deal with Mo Ying? And Palace Master said, Mo Ying's soul is strange. What does that mean? Holding the dagger, Xiang Shengfa was thinking about Palace Master's words. Once again, Mo Ying launched another attack. The cold wind made Xiang Shengfa's hair stand on end. His eyes widened. At the moment when Mo Ying attacked, his arm was being controlled by an invisible force. He suddenly raised his hand, ignoring Mo Ying's two balls of powder, and forcefully stabbed the dagger into Mo Ying's shoulder. Xiang Shengfa felt as if his internal organs were being crushed by the two balls of powder, and they were all broken. Waves of pain caused him to be unable to straighten his body. He was in great pain. He didn't see anything either. In front of him, the girl whose dagger had been stabbed by him suddenly froze on the spot. Mo Ying slowly lowered her head and expressionlessly looked at her shoulder, at the dagger with only the handle exposed. Her lifeless eyes flickered for a moment. It was very subtle, not obvious, and disappeared in a flash. The next moment, as if she had lost all her strength, her petite body fell limply to the ground. Miss Mo. The great general noticed Mo Yuying's situation and immediately killed the Palace of Darkness disciple in front of him and rushed over. General, don't go over. Miss Mo, look at her. A soldier's voice was full of fear as he stopped the great general. When the great general got closer, he noticed Mo Yuying had fallen to the ground. Her petite body was actually enveloped by a black aura. Her petite body was faintly discernible within the black aura. Chapter 32:25. What's going on? What happened to Miss Mo? Miss Mo, wouldn't she be assimilated by the Palace of Darkness? The soldier said with a trembling voice. The general's face darkened. This black chi was indeed strange. However, it felt different from the cold black chi released by the Palace of Darkness. But he couldn't be sure. The black chi on Mo Yuying had nothing to do with the Palace of Darkness. The general stood still and pondered for a long time. In the end, he walked towards Mo Yuying. This was the friend of the emperor's wife. How could he watch coldly and let the friend of the emperor's wife perish on her own? The general was about to approach Mo Yuying and help her up. Then he heard the dull voice coming from the black chi. Get out of the way, don't worry about me. The voice was as indifferent as ever, but he could hear it. Her aura was much weaker. Miss Mo, the general said worriedly, frowning tightly. I'll send you to a safe place to rest first. You can't have an accident. Defend Valley Wind City. Mo Yuying said word by word in a rigid tone. After the voice fell, her petite body trembled and curled up again. It seemed that there was a painful feeling spreading in her body. The black chi that enveloped her was getting thicker and thicker. General, not good. Another group of undead puppets and disciples of the Palace of Darkness are coming from the Palace of Darkness. Suddenly, the shouts of the soldiers came from not far away. The general was startled and turned to look at the soldiers in shock. The soldiers were also full of fear. General, what should we do? Now we are already at a disadvantage. Another group of undead puppets and disciples of the Palace of Darkness are coming. We can't hold on. Not far away, after hearing the shouts of the soldiers, Xiang Shengfa, whose internal organs had been broken by Mo Yuying's powder ball, heard the shouts of the soldiers. He couldn't help but be ecstatic. It must be his little Moo Moo. It must be his little Moo Moo coming. Battle cries rang out as they charged forward. Another group of undead puppets and disciples of the Palace of Darkness joined in. The pressure on the soldiers of Valley Wind City was even greater. The general was forced to pick up his weapon and deal with the enemy in front of him first. Little by little, the soldiers of Valley Wind City retreated more and more, and the range became smaller and smaller. Finally, the soldiers of Valley Wind City and the disciples of the Imperial Palace could only stay near the Valley Wind City wall. He was surrounded by the pincer attack from the Palace of Darkness. The great general and the first-rate soldiers kept retreating while protecting Mo Yuying within the range of their protection. Great general, what should we do? The soldiers nervously stared at the undead corpse puppets around them and asked in a low voice. The general gripped his spear tightly. Delay. Wait until Madame D and the others return. But there was simply no way to drag this out. The current situation. The only option was to abandon the city and flee. Otherwise, all of them would be buried here. The soldiers wanted to say the rest, but they didn't dare to. Everyone could see that. There was no way the great general would choose to abandon the city and flee. The atmosphere was extremely tense. The corpses of the Netherworld Palace slowly closed the encirclement. Cough, cough, cough. Xiang Shengfa coughed and panted heavily. He reached out to the disciples of Gloomy Palace and said, You're here to save my captain, right? Quick, carry me back. Chapter 32:26. Little Moo Moo. Where's little Moo Moo? Xiang Shengfa was startled and immediately shouted. A pair of malicious eyes glared at the disciples of the Palace of Darkness, who bypassed him and rushed to the city wall. Little Moo Moo. Suddenly, a charming voice was heard. Immediately, a fragrant wind wafted through the air. A beautiful figure walked gracefully past the surrounding disciples of the Palace of Darkness and slowly walked over. The woman covered her bright red lips and giggled. "What a pity! Your little Moo is not here yet." When Xiang Sheng Fa's gaze landed on the concubine's figure, his pupils suddenly widened. There seemed to be something stuck in his neck. Dai. Ah, Dai, it's you. The person who came was one of the 4 great saint techniques of the dark forces, the only woman, butterfly saint technique. The butterfly saint technique smiled flirtatiously. "Ah, Xiang, it's really not easy to see you half dead. Ah, Dai, save me." Xiang Sheng Fa's lips were trembling violently. Butterfly saint technique smile was even more flirtatious. But in her eyes, there was a flash of resentment. She chuckled softly. "Save you? In the beginning, when you pushed me into the refining vessel of the corpse puppet for Yin Mu, did you ever think of saving me?" Xiang Sheng Fa's face turned pale. I just made a mistake. It wasn't my intention. Wasn't my intention." Butterfly saint technique smile was even more charming. "Then, I'm not willing to save you now, and I want you to die here. It's also not my intention." "I die, you can't do this." Xiang Sheng Fa moved his hands in a panic. We are all working for the Palace of Darkness. Palace Master appeared just now. If I die, you won't be able to explain it to Palace Master, right? It's a pity." Butterfly Saint Technique bent down and looked down at Xiang Sheng Fa. "It was Palace Master who asked me to come here because Palace Master doesn't trust your ability at all. You useless thing." After saying that, she lifted her foot and ruthlessly stomped on Xiang Shengfa's chest. "Don't worry, I won't let you be lonely. After you die, I will immediately send your beloved Yin Mu to accompany you." The butterfly Saint Law's eyes burned with hatred. She concentrated her dark force on her feet and exerted force. Her foot pierced through the heart of the sacred elephant. The great general and the others watched as the 2 from the Palace of Gloom suddenly killed each other. The elephant holy technique, who had been clamoring to take over their Valley Wind city, died in the hands of the Palace of Darkness just like that. The soldiers looked at the sacred butterfly technique with even more fear. This woman was even scarier than Elephant Saint Dharma. After the Butterfly Saint Technique dealt with the Elephant Saint Technique, she wasn't in a hurry to attack the soldiers. Her graceful figure slowly walked towards Mo Ying, who was shrouded in black qi. She bent down and pulled out the black dagger that was stuck in Mo Ying's shoulder. Mo Ying groaned in pain. "You're the little guy that the Palace Master wants." The Butterfly Saint Technique indifferently glanced at the dagger in her hand, then slowly shifted her gaze to Mo Ying. You stay away from Miss Mo." "What do you want to do to Miss Mo?" The great general and the soldiers wanted to rush forward, but were stopped by the disciples of the Palace of Darkness in the front row. Chapter 32:27. "How dare you?" The great general's eyes widened as he bellowed furiously. "Miss Mo is a good friend of the Imperial Palace's mistress. If you touch Miss Mo, the Overlord will not let you off." Butterfly Saint Technique's smile was incomparably gorgeous. "Great General, I'm afraid you still don't know about the grudge between us and that little slut Yiqing Luo. If you didn't mention her, I could still be a little gentler, but you..." The next moment, Butterfly Saint Technique's expression turned gloomy and her tone was filled with viciousness. "If you want to blame yourself for being that little bastard's friend." Butterfly Saint Technique's fingers suddenly clenched tightly. That jet-black dagger seemed to be shrouded in a layer of black light. Her eyes were filled with malice as she suddenly stabbed towards Mo Ying's body. Mo Ying, who was shrouded in black qi, was unable to move. But her consciousness was very clear. She tried her best to adjust the profound energy in her body, try to avoid that dagger which was heading toward her. But no matter how much she tried to concentrate, the profound energy in her body was like a plate of loose sand floating in her body. Indistinctly, there seemed to be something tearing her body. No, it wasn't her body that was tearing. It was soul. She could clearly feel it. Her soul was slowly peeling away from her body. Mo Ying panted. His usually emotionless face now revealed a pained expression. It had been a long time since she felt pain. Looks like this black dagger was deliberately targeted at her. Mo Ewing shut her eyes tightly. Godless Island must have something to do with the secluded palace to be able to obtain this black dagger. Over at the Godless Island, finally couldn't hold it in any longer. Finally, wanted to destroy her. Island Saint? Heh, Godless Island, Godless Palace. Mo Ying's fingers tightened. But because of the tearing feeling in her body, she loosened her grip helplessly. Mo Ying's thoughts were running wild. But in reality, it was just a blink of an eye. Butterfly Saint Technique, who was holding the black dagger, had a sinister glint in her eyes as she stabbed towards Mo Ying's face. Clang! There was a loud sound of collision. Mo Ewing didn't feel an even more painful pain than she had imagined. Her eyelashes fluttered, and she slowly opened her eyes. In front of him, a red feather fan that seemed to be burning with raging flames pressed against the black dagger. The hand that held the feather fan was slender and fair, sparkling and translucent like fine jade. It was as if the owner of the hand had casually blocked the black dagger. Mo Ying's empty eyes slightly widened, revealing a rarely seen surprise and joy. Sacred Butterfly Technique, did you ask for my permission to stab my little shadow a few times? A clear and melodious voice rang out leisurely on the battlefield. It was clearly a sweet and smiling voice. However, when the people present heard it, they could not help but feel a chill run down their spines, a bone-chilling coldness. When the Butterfly Saint Technique heard this voice, her body stiffened. Her hand that was holding the black arm trembled uncontrollably. Following the raging flame feather fan, the Butterfly Saint Technique's line of sight slowly focused on the owner of the feather fan. Yiqing Luo's arrival was within her expectations, but also unexpected. After all, from the start of the war till now, Mo Xian and Yiqing Luo had never appeared. Unexpected, because before the secluded palace took action, Feng Ling had solemnly vowed that she had a way to delay Yiqing Luo and Mo Xian. Chapter 32:28. And within his expectations was because of Yiqing Luo, that unstable factor. With Yiqing Luo around, everything was possible. The Butterfly Saint Technique stared blankly at Yiqing Luo, staring at that fiery red robe with an enchanting smile on her face. His gaze then slowly shifted to the young girl, the man dressed in billowing purple robes who looked like a banished immortal. Inexplicably, the Butterfly Saint Technique felt her legs turn to jelly. Shadow. Yiqing Luo didn't look at the Butterfly Saint Technique anymore, but squatted down and stretched out her hand to support Mo Ewing. Don't touch me. Mo Ewing hurriedly opened her mouth. Her voice was like a machine, as if it was in fast forward. As soon as she finished speaking, her eyebrows knitted tightly together. Looking at Mo Ying's painful expression, how could Yiqing Luo's hand stop? Don't talk anymore. I'm here. Everything is fine now. Yiqing Luo's hand stretched out towards Mo Ewing. Don't know. It will devour. Mo Ewing anxiously wanted to avoid it. But the words that came out of his mouth were suddenly stuck in his throat. Because Yiqing Luo's hand passed through the black chi on her body and touched her body. The soft little hands caused Mo Ying's delicate body to tremble. Then, Mo Ewing felt that the tearing pain in her body, the feeling of her soul leaving her body, was easily suppressed by that hand. Mo Ying's beautiful eyes were slightly startled. His empty and lifeless eyes were fixated on Yiqing Luo's hand. That hand seemed to have the ability to purify. It purified all the black aura around her. Her petite body was hugged by the girl's slender arms that gave her a sense of security. It's all right now. With me around, no one can hurt you. Yiqing Luo's voice was light, but it was filled with warmth that made one feel at ease. Mo Ying's eyelashes fluttered as she stared blankly at the face that was so close to her. His heart had not fluctuated at all. At this moment, there were faint signs of recovery. Whoosh! Suddenly, Mo Ying's sharp senses detected an icy cold intent coming from the side. She quickly moved her eyes and looked in the direction of the cold attack. Then, he met with a pair of icy cold eyes. That was Di-Zun. Why was the Overlord staring at her like that? Mo Ying blinked her eyes as she tilted her head, looking at Mo Xian, whose expression was getting darker and darker. Noticing Mo Ying's movements, Yiqing Luo's vision also looked over. After seeing Mo Xian's expression, Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes at him. I treat Shadow as my younger sister, so hugging her is very normal. Could it be that? You want to hug her? Mo Xian's face sank as he spat out two words. No. Then why are you glaring at my shadow for? Yiqing Luo shielded Mo Ying as she hugged her tightly. Mo Xian's face darkened further. No matter how slow Mo Ying's reaction was at this moment, he had a strong feeling the Overlord seemed like. He wanted to forcefully pull her out from Qing Luo's embrace. Cough. Well, let me take care of Shadow. Yin Xiao saw the Overlord's expression and rushed out to smooth things over. She took Mo Ying from Yiqing Luo's arms. Qing Luo, settle the secluded palace's side first. I'll take care of the Shadow. I'll take care of it. Saying that, she used her peripheral vision to shoot a glance at Mo Xian's direction. Mo Ying was switched into Yin Xiao Yi's arms just like that. Mo Xian's expression then took a turn for the better. Yiqing Luo. Chapter 32-29. Yiqing Luo stared fiercely at Mo Xian before shifting her gaze on a butterfly Saint Dharma. Her lips curled up as she smiled sweetly. Butterfly Saint Dharma seems to be very shocked to see me. Butterfly Saint Dharma stared at Yiqing Luo as her heart started to feel uneasy. It had only been a few months since she last met Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's aura, as compared to before, was much more oppressive. She still remembered the first time she met Yiqing Luo. Although Yiqing Luo had a little bit of intelligence, her reaction was extremely fast. But standing beside the Overlord, she was just a young lady who could only rely on the Overlord to survive. She even felt that she could totally kill Yiqing Luo easily. But just a few short months, Yiqing Luo had already grown to standing beside the Overlord. It would not cover up her radiance, as though only she had the right to stand beside the Overlord. Butterfly Saint Dharma's heart trembled fiercely. Yiqing Luo's growth. Even she, when facing Yiqing Luo, wanted to give way to avoid Yiqing Luo's sharpness. I'm also quite shocked to see you. Yiqing Luo continued to smile as she spoke. She didn't feel awkward because Butterfly Saint Dharma didn't reply her. She smiled sweetly. Shouldn't the mission of invading South Continent be Butterfly Saint Dharma? Butterfly Saint Dharma took a deep breath as she clenched her fists, pretending to be calm. Yiqing Luo, South Continent secluded palace is mine. That young lady, secluded palace is also mine. If you know what's good for you, hand over that young lady, otherwise. Her face sunk as she spoke sinisterly. You don't wish for these soldiers, Imperial Palace's disciples, and your friends to be infected by the large number of dead corpses, right? As Butterfly Saint Dharma said that, her heart gradually gained some confidence. She raised her chin. I know, you have ways to deal with the dead corpses. But a large number of dead corpses. Are you sure you have a way to deal with them? When Yiqing Luo heard that, she giggled softly. Butterfly Saint Dharma, are you sure? Those threats that you said will come true? Are you sure I don't have a way to destroy a large number of undead corpse puppets in one go? You can try. A layer of frost appeared on the butterfly's sacred technique's beautiful face. Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes rose slightly as her lips curled into an enchanting smile. Looks like Butterfly Saint Technique still doesn't know what happened in the Palace of Seclusion. She touched her chin and smiled wickedly. Holy Butterfly Technique, do you want to know where my dear Ashian and I rushed back to Valleywind City? The Butterfly Saint Technique's face stiffened. She had a vague guess in her heart. East of the city, behind the ruined temple. Yiqing Luo stared at the Butterfly Saint Technique's eyes as she slowly spat out her red lips word by word. The Butterfly Saint Technique's face suddenly turned pale. So, I'm afraid the reinforcements that you've been longing for won't be able to rush over. Yiqing Luo's eyebrows were as enchanting as a painting, but the words that came out of her mouth were bone-chilling. No, impossible. The butterfly Saint Technique's face turned pale as she instinctively staggered a step back. How could you possibly find that place? How? Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes swept past the Valley Wind City, surrounding the Palace of Seclusion's disciples. The smile beneath her eyes was tainted with a hint of coldness. Chapter 32:30. Who was it? Butterfly Saint Law's pupils dilated. A figure appeared in her mind. Feng Ling. It was Feng Ling who told them with absolute certainty. She had a way to delay Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian. She had a way to make use of Valley Wind City's ordinary citizens' trust towards her to help Secluded Palace to attack Valley Wind City. It was because of this. After Elephant Saint Law finished probing, that was why the Butterfly Saint Technique had brought her team to the battlefield. What Butterfly Saint Law wanted to do. Not only did she want to take revenge on Xiang Xingfa, who had pushed her into the vessel of the corpse puppet for Si Yin Mu and almost made her feed to the corpse puppet, and to take the credit for attacking Valley Wind City. But Yiqing Luo appeared. Dmo Xin appeared. And not only did he appear, he also resolved Secluded Palace's base in South Wave's continent. The base was resolved. It was equivalent to Secluded Palace's power in South Wave's continent had been disbanded, which represented Secluded Palace's current power, which left only Valley Wind City's surroundings were surrounded by these Secluded Palace's disciples, and the surviving, no more than 300 puppets. And she was still thinking about the base, the puppets, or the Secluded Palace's disciples' dreams were all gone. The base was destroyed. Secluded Palace had no more reinforcements. But Valley Wind City's reinforcements had arrived. Not only Dmo Xian and Yiqing Luo's return, they also brought along a large batch of Imperial Palace's disciples. Those Imperial Palace's disciples were imposing and imposing. One look, and one knew that they were the Imperial Palace's outstanding disciples. Furthermore, Dmo Xian and Yiqing Luo's return. It gave the Valley Wind City's soldiers a huge boost in morale. The current situation was clear. Butterfly Saint Law's gorgeous eyes were sinister, and her distorted features made one horrified. Feng Ling. It was Feng Ling, that scoundrel. She should have taken precautions against Feng Ling. That scoundrel loved the Overlord deeply. How would she possibly help Secluded Palace sincerely? Help them? All of this was Feng Ling's scoundrel plan. Butterfly Saint Law cursed Feng Ling hatefully in her heart. Yiqing Luo, who had been staring at Butterfly Saint Law, squinted her eyes. When he saw the resentment in the Butterfly Saint Technique's eyes, the corners of her lips curled up a little. As expected, the sacred Butterfly Technique was suspicious of Feng Ling. If that was the case, how could Windling stay in the Palace of Darkness? Didn't Windchime like to scheme? This was the first gift she returned to him. Yiqing Luo's brows were still enchanting, but that enchanting did not reach her eyes. Retreat, retreat. A chill rose in the heart of the Butterfly Saint Law. She clenched her fists and sternly ordered, "All evacuate Valley Wind City." The murderous aura lingered in the sky. The Butterfly Saint Technique only felt that her limbs were icy cold. She endured the rotten smell of the corpses, hid under the undead puppets, and quickly retreated. At this moment, the Dark Nether Palace disciples were also affected by the aura of the battlefield. As soon as he heard the Butterfly Saint Technique's command, one by one, they quickly retreated. Originally, how quickly they attacked the soldiers of Valley Wind City from the front and back. At this moment, they were retreating as fast as they could. However, Valley Wind City is not a place where your Secluded Palace can come and go as you please. The young lady's clear voice was pleasant to the ears. Just as they retreated a few steps back, the Imperial Palace's disciples surrounded the disciples of the Palace of Darkness and the undead corpse puppets from all directions, blocking their escape route. Chapter 32:31. Yiqing Luo smiled sweetly, as her brows were curved into a smile. After all, I've taken advantage of you. This is the deal between me and South Continent, so, since you've entered Valley Wind City then, don't even think of leaving. Butterfly Saint Technique's gaze swept across the surrounding Imperial Palace's disciples as her heart was filled with anger. In her imagination, she should have led her team to invade the Southways continent and obtain this merit. Obviously, the one who was surrounded and trapped without any way to resist was Valley Wind City. Obviously, Nether Palace should be the one to win. Even the citizens of Valley Wind City had betrayed them. No, wrong. All these should have been borne by Elephant Saint Technique. Why was it that the one who had no way to resist had become her Butterfly Saint Technique? You Nether Palace had repeatedly targeted me and the people around me, so you deserve to die, especially when you've hurt Shadow. Yiqing Luo slowly walked towards Butterfly Saint Technique. Her footsteps were light and slow, noble and elegant. The strong, imposing manner that came charging toward her made it hard for Butterfly Saint Technique to breathe. Yiqing Luo's charming eyes met with Butterfly Saint Technique's eyes. Her long and narrow eyes were curved, and the corners of her mouth were raised into a smile. But Butterfly Saint Technique could clearly see the murderous intent in the depths of those sparkling eyes. Butterfly Saint Technique's heart suddenly trembled. An icy cold intent surged up from the bottom of her feet and spread to her limbs. She couldn't control herself as she started to tremble slightly. The pain that Shadow had suffered, the Imperial Palace's disciple sacrifice, I want you to repay 100 times for. The last 4 words, Yiqing Luo stared at Butterfly Saint Technique's eyes, word by word, squeezed out from the gaps of her teeth. Under this cold gaze, Butterfly Saint Technique felt a surge of fear rising from the bottom of her heart. An enormous pressure shrouded her body and mind. No, not me. Your friend wasn't hurt by me. It's Elephant Saint Technique. Not me. Butterfly Saint Technique's voice trembled. The person who killed so many Imperial Palace's disciples is also Elephant Saint Technique's people. It has nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with me. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as her smile became even more enchanting. But you killed Elephant Saint Technique, so I can only seek revenge from you. The sacred Butterfly Technique shook her head vigorously. Even if you didn't hurt Shadow, but you already had the intention to give her a few stabs. Sony, you deserve to be punished. Yiqing Luo continued to smile as she spoke. The flowing light in her eyes was crafty and bright. During the conversation, Yiqing Luo was already 3 steps away from the Butterfly Saint Technique. The Butterfly Saint Technique could deeply feel the majestic aura that was released from Yiqing Luo, suppressing her heavily. From the moment you appeared here, you should bear the consequences. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a teasing smile. The Butterfly Sacred Technique's eyes widened. Under this extreme fear, the Butterfly Saint Technique was like a broken jar as she raised her palm and slammed it down towards Yiqing Luo's chest. Whoosh! This palm strike landed on thin air. The Sacred Butterfly Technique's palm fiercely slapped the air. The aftershock of the strong, profound energy caused a few more cracks to appear on the ground. The Butterfly Sacred Technique's face paled, and she looked around nervously. She was afraid that the red figure would suddenly appear beside her. However, no matter how vigilant she wasn't able to see any remnant shadow of Yiqing Luo. Even when Yiqing Luo appeared beside her, she didn't notice it at all, until Yiqing Luo's silvery bell-like laughter was heard by her ear. The Butterfly Saint Technique was then alarmed as she swiftly retreated to one side. This retreat. Chapter 32. Butterfly Saint Dharma was in so much pain that her entire body turned stiff. The robe on her chest was stained with blood. She turned her head sideways and discovered that the young lady who was laughing beside her earlier had unknowingly appeared behind her. The young lady's eyes were enchanting, her pink lips had a slight smile, and her face was innocent and pure. But the action of her hands was totally incompatible with her expression. The young lady's hand moved slowly. Butterfly Saint Dharma felt that the wound on her back was as though it was cut open by a sharp weapon. Oh! Suddenly, the sharp blade was pulled away from her back. Fresh blood spurted out. She lost the strength to support herself. Butterfly Saint Dharma's body fell heavily onto the ground. A distorted face, so painful that her facial features could not be seen. Yiqing Luo shook the blood-stained dagger in her hand lightly. Yiqing Luo bent over and looked down at Butterfly Saint Dharma. This is the pain that the shadow is suffering. There are still 99 more stabs. Butterfly Saint Dharma was in so much pain that she almost fainted, but her consciousness was still clear. She could clearly feel the feeling of the sharp blade piercing through the flesh and bones. She could even hear the sound of the sharp blade entering the flesh and bones. 99 stabs. Pay back 100 times? Did Yiqing Luo really want to stab her 100 times? Don't worry. Within these 100 stabs, I will not let you die. Yiqing Luo kindly smiled. You should believe in my medical skills. Butterfly Saint Dharma's face was ashen. It would be better to just let her die. Yiqing Luo was still smiling, but the expression on her face turned solemn. Soldiers of Valley Wind City, Imperial Palace's disciples, the team leader who invaded Southern Continent has been captured. Next, it's your battlefield. Her voice was clear and ethereal, following the wind, resounding through every corner of the battlefield. The soldiers were burning with fighting intent. The battlefield, clashing and killing once again. But this time round, the situation had completely reversed. Secluded Palace's disciples, dead corpses and puppets were almost defeated. Grand General, please lock up this team leader. Later on, I will take revenge for the remaining 99 stabs. Yiqing Luo looked at the Grand General and smiled. The reversal of the situation made the usually dignified Grand General's eyes redden. He solemnly looked at Yiqing Luo as he clenched his fist tightly, replying in a sonorous and forceful voice. Imperial Madam, leave it to me. I'll definitely look after her for you. Yiqing Luo smiled without saying a word, as the general held the butterfly saint technique with one hand and walked towards the inn. The butterfly's sacred law could clearly hear the young girl behind her. She said to the man beside her in a light tone, "The people of Palace of Gloomy Darkness are really stupid. They really think they can rely on wind chime to make the people betray them and let them conquer the South Waves continent. Are they questioning your attractiveness?" The young woman smiled and continued. "It's all thanks to Feng Ling that we were able to take care of the Palace of Darkness base and successfully take back the Southwater continent. The next time we meet, I'll have to thank her properly." Wind chimes, wind chimes. The butterfly saint technique roared this name in her heart. The great general carried the butterfly saint technique into the inn. Yiqing Luo then stopped her voice. D.M.O. Xian's eyes drooped as he gazed at the young lady who was hugging his arm as his lips curled up slightly. "What are you scheming now?" "I'm returning wind chimes' gift." Yiqing Luo's eyes curved as her slender fingers poked D.M.O. Xian's chest fiercely. "Why, feeling heartache?" D.M.O. Xian's large palm wrapped around her fingers as his voice was calm but gentle. "Yeah, heartache." Yiqing Luo's smile faded as her hand started to struggle. "What a great D.M.O. Xian. You dare to feel heartache for another woman." Chapter 32-33. What's your heartache for? Yiqing Luo raised her brows as she crossed her arms and looked at Yiqing Luo, as though to express, "I'll just quietly watch you continue to weave, see what kind of flowers you can weave." D.M.O. Xian's expression didn't change as he held up one of her hands. His thin lips curled into an intoxicating smile. "Naturally, my heartache for you to spend so much effort just to return the gift." What a fellow. He actually wanted to use the beauty trap to seduce her. Huh, did he really think that she, Yiqing Luo, was immune to his beauty? Yiqing Luo snorted as she arrogantly raised her chin. "To deal with these two scums, why do I need to waste my brain? But I'll accept your heartache." Saying that, her slender fair fingers lifted D.M.O. Xian's chin as she tiptoed and pulled his body downwards, pressing her lips against his. She was indeed towards Demo Xian's beauty trap. There was no way she was immune. Demo Xian's beauty trap worked on her 100 times. The battle here has ended. Let's pack up and head over to East Continent to take a look at the situation. Yiqing Luo released his lips as her little hand encircled his neck from his chin as she gave an enchanting smile. Dmo Xian's eyes were deep as his gaze hit a certain special emotion that was jumping. His gaze stared intensely at her pink lips. Yiqing Luo wasn't an ignorant young lady, so how would she not understand the meaning of Dmo Xian's gaze? That kiss was considered as igniting the fire. Yiqing Luo's smile became even more malicious. The biggest credit for South Continent to be able to be reclaimed is you. Although I really want to reward you, but the time and place isn't right, so I can't do anything about it. Dmo Xian's thin lips curled upwards as he suddenly bent over, hugging her waist as he carried her in his arms. Yiqing Luo was shocked as she hooked her arms around his neck. Dmo Xian carried her as they crossed the battlefield, which was filled with blood, past the surrounding soldiers and disciples who were still entangled with each other. Just like the both of them didn't belong to this battlefield, didn't belong here. And the surrounding people who were entangled with each other also completely didn't dare to go near them. Just like that, they allowed Dmo Xian to carry Yiqing Luo as they walked towards the direction of the inn. But everyone only saw such a scene that was full of pretentiousness. But Yiqing Luo was nestled in Dmo Xian's arms with her face flushed red. There were several times when she gritted her teeth and wanted to punch his chest with her fist. She really wanted to grab Dmo Xian's lapel and tell him those onlookers who thought that the scene of the Overlord carrying her away from the battlefield was very cool. All of you have been deceived by him. She was deceived by his invisible aura of pretentiousness. What do you mean by acting cool? He was a King bully, okay? At the same time, Dmo Xian carried her up. Then, he softly whispered something in her ear. If there's no problem with the time and place, are you at my disposal? That voice had a deliberately seductive magnetism. The teasing Yiqing Luo almost couldn't control herself. My boyfriend is too much of a beast. He wants to push me down all the time. What should I do? I'm waiting online. It's urgent. There was no suspense in this war. Secluded Palace's disciples were all captured. The corpses and puppets were all killed by the Imperial Palace's disciples, Devil Class, and other youngsters. The soldiers used those special weapons to kill all of them, whereas after the battle in Valley Wind City ended. Under Yiqing Luo's reminder, the Grand General. Chapter 32-34. In less than 3 days, the Southern Wave continent returned to its former tranquility. All over the South Billow continent, the people who were still alive walked out of the darkness and saw the sun again. This was because the monarch of the South Waves continent had fled the South Wave continent before the Nether Palace had conquered the South Wave continent. This caused countless noble clans to look down on the Southern Wave continent's royal family and insult them. Therefore, the sect master of the Gufeng sect, Gu Ming, temporarily took over the responsibilities of the imperial family and reorganized the Southern Water continent. Gu Ming was in this battle, in the South Billow continent. It was deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. He would take charge of the overall situation. No one disagreed. Things were settled just like that. They gathered in the afternoon, 3 days later. Yiqing Luo and the others were already prepared to leave South Tide Continent. The general hurried over, his face full of guilt. Lord Overlord, Madam Emperor. Oh no, Darkness Palace. Darkness Palace's team leader, the great general, who was always dignified and straightforward, was now stuttering and unable to form a complete sentence. She ran away, right? Yiqing Luo smiled as she said, what the great general didn't finish his sentence. The general was startled and immediately lowered his head in guilt. I'm sorry. It's my fault. He pursed his lips tightly as he suddenly knelt down towards Yiqing Luo. May Madam punish me. No need. Yiqing Luo waved her hand as she helped him up. So be it. But this is a captive that Madame D worked hard to capture. The general clenched his fists. The captives he had been guarding had escaped from him. To him, this was a fatal blow. Not only had he let down Yi Qing Luo's trust, he would also feel sorry for his armor. Moreover, he had let down his duty as the great general. It's all right. You don't have to feel guilty. Yi Qing Luo smiled warmly at the Grand General. If I don't want her to leave Valley Wind City, do you think she can escape? The general's pupils dilated little by little. The meaning of these words was, did the Emperor Madam let the leader of the Palace of Darkness go on purpose? Yi Qing Luo's eyes were filled with smiles as she nodded calmly. Why? The general could not understand. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips rose as she gave a crafty smile. She's already a dying person. How can we let her die so easily? Naturally, is to make her do something valuable before she dies. Looking at Yi Qing Luo's confident and flamboyant, smiling face, the anxiety in the great general's heart gradually calmed down. Looks like everything was under the lady's control. It was no wonder that after the leader of the team from Abyss Palace was locked up, the Lady Monarch didn't say anything about the interrogation of the leader of the Palace of Darkness team or the results. He just locked up the team leader of the Dark Nether Palace here, just so that the leader of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness could escape from Valley Wind City. However, the general did not understand what the lady meant by final value, but he trusted the Imperial Lady. As long as Deforn decided, there was absolutely no deviation. South Continent's matter has been settled and Palace of Darkness has suffered a heavy loss. I've left a batch of weapons to deal with the undead puppets for you. Palace of Darkness. For a short period of time, they will absolutely not dare to find trouble with South Continent. Yi Qing Luo patted the great general's shoulder. Chapter 32-35. Mn. Yi Qing Luo smiled. I stayed in South Continent because of the deal with Sect Master Gu. Now that the deal has been completed, it's time for us to leave. The Grand General's lips moved. A burly man didn't know how to speak. In his heart, he didn't wish for Yi Qing Luo and the rest to leave. But Yi Qing Luo's words were indeed reasonable. After some time, he pursed his lips. When does Imperial Madam intend to leave? Should be latest by tomorrow. Yi Qing Luo's smile grew, giving off an unfathomable feeling. Not knowing why, the Grand General felt that Yi Qing Luo's words contained some sort of message. That unfathomable tone, as though everything was within her grasp. Imperial Madam, may I explain this matter to Sect Master Gu? The Grand General cupped his fists and inquired respectfully. Imperial Madam is the savior of South Continent. Sect Master Gu must want to send Imperial Madam off personally. Yi Qing Luo nodded. We are leaving. Naturally, we should inform the Master of South Continent. Night. Yi Qing Luo and the rest, under the Grand General's lead, arrived at the Royal Palace in South Continent. In the reception hall, there were many exquisite delicacies. But, although it was exquisite, but because South Continent had yet to regain its original richness, the ingredients were actually very simple. But one could tell, Gu Ming had put in a lot of effort. Gu Ming had already heard about Yi Qing Luo and the rest leaving. He didn't stop Yi Qing Luo and the rest from leaving, but respectfully and gratefully thanked everyone, and stood up, toasting everyone a cup of wine. Gu Ming tactfully struck up a conversation with the Grand General from time to time. This parting banquet was rather comfortable, but just as the banquet was about to end, a guard hurried over and whispered something into Gu Ming's ear. Gu Ming's expression instantly darkened. Yi Qing Luo acutely sensed that Gu Ming's gaze was on her, taking a look. Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. In her heart, she was clear what had happened. Moments later, Gu Ming waved the guard away, looking at Yi Qing Luo awkwardly. Imperial Madam, I have something I want to discuss with you. Yi Qing Luo put down the wine glass in her hand, her long and narrow eyes raised upwards. That smile, which didn't look like a smile, was even more mysterious and unfathomable. Even Gu Ming, who had been in a high position for a long time, could not help but feel pressured. Let me guess. Yi Qing Luo opened her mouth with a light smile. Her voice was clear and calm. Could it be that monarch from East Continent has come to visit? Gu Ming was surprised. Madam, did you hear it? Yi Qing Luo smiled sweetly and shook her head. I guessed. Guming's heart was filled with even more admiration towards Yi Qing Luo. Since Yi Qing Luo had already guessed it, he didn't mince his words. It's indeed the East Tide monarch who paid a visit, I'm afraid. He's here to seek your help regarding the East Tide continent, if you're not willing to meet him. Why not? Yi Qing Luo smiled as her brows rose. We originally intended to head towards the East Continent. Since the East Continent monarch is here, I'd like to ask the East Continent monarch to take care of us in the East Continent. When Guming heard that, he didn't think too much about what Yi Qing Luo's pleasant words meant. He was afraid that Yi Qing Luo would refuse to meet the East Tide monarch because of her relationship with Jade Dome's sect master. In this way, he was stuck in the middle, not knowing what to do. Chapter 32-36. But what Guming didn't expect was, it wasn't only East Wave monarch who came, and Jade Sky sect master, Hao Nanren. Hao Nanren's face darkened, and that plump face was filled with unwillingness. East Wave monarch was walking in front with a friendly smile as he walked in quickly and cupped his fist towards Guming intimately. Brother Gu, long time no see. Congratulations, Brother Gu, for protecting the South Wave continent. Guming's gaze was fixed on Hao Nanren, who was standing behind East Wave monarch with an unfriendly expression as his lips twitched stiffly. Protecting the South Wave continent is not my credit. I know. In this hall filled with servants, East Wave monarch didn't address himself as emperor as he placed his status very low. And Miss Yi and the World Mercenary Group. He accurately cupped his fists towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. His vision, when it met Yi Qing Luo's side, on that indolent, peerless man, his expression congealed instantly. Following that, it was a subconscious action. East Wave monarch knelt down. This action startled Hao Nanren, who had a sullen expression on his face. He looked towards the direction where East Wave monarch knelt down. His vision was fixed on Yi Qing Luo. By right, with DMO, Shin's existence, basically no one would be able to ignore him. But unfortunately, Hao Nanren had suffered the first humiliation in his life in Yi Qing Luo's hands. Towards Yi Qing Luo, he hated her to the extreme. Especially today, he was forcefully dragged by East Wave monarch to apologize to her. Hao Nanren's heart was originally filled with rebellion and unwillingness. Now that he saw Yi Qing Luo's face, and because East Wave monarch didn't care about his face and lowered himself to kneel down, it made the dissatisfaction in his heart completely burst out. Monarch, why are you kneeling down to that slut? Didn't I say that it was Sect Master Gu's credit to chase those people from secluded palace out of South Wave continent? What has it got to do with that slut? She's just a young lady. How can she overturn the heavens? Don't try any doctor in a desperate situation. Don't forget your identity. You represent the entire East Wave continent. Hao Nanren's words were filled with sincerity. Then, he looked at the East Wave sovereign with an extremely disappointed expression. His words nearly caused the East Wave sovereign to faint. He knelt on the ground and did not dare to raise his head. He tugged at Hao Nanren's sleeve and shouted in a low voice, "Shut up and kneel down." Monarch, Hao Nanren was enraged as well. Do you want to bring shame to the entire East continent? Sect Master of the Jade Dome sect. Gu Ming, who was sitting on the high seat, couldn't bear listening to these words. If you continue to speak rudely, my South Tide continent will not welcome you. Hao Nanren's face was gloomy, and a gust of cold wind shot out from his eyes that were almost invisible on his chubby face. If the East Wave sovereign hadn't forced him to come to the South Wave continent, did Guming really think that he wanted to come? So what if the Southern Wave's continent was taken back from the hands of the Netherworld Palace? He had experienced a war. The South Tide continent was no longer the same as before. If he was the East Wave sovereign, he would definitely lead his army to occupy the South Wave continent without a second word. In Hao Nanren's eyes, the current South Billow continent was not even worth mentioning. The East Wave sovereign actually had to lower himself? How could he put his own status so low? Chapter 32-37. Hao Nanren's words were indeed arrogant. The East Wave sovereign, who was kneeling on the ground, broke out in cold sweat. The East Wave Sovereign was well aware of Hao Nanren's temperament. Because of this, the last time when Hao Nanren wanted to personally discuss the deal with Yiqing Luo, she specially promised Hao Nanren half of the benefits of the kingdom. But unexpectedly, however, Hao Nanren still returned empty-handed. Although from Hao Nanren's mouth, he had pushed all the blame onto Yiqing Luo. However, the East Wave Sovereign was no fool. He was well aware of Hao Nanren's temperament. He also knew that it was Hao Nanren's fault that the two sides didn't come to an agreement last time. Later on, the South Wave continent was attacked by the Dark Nether Palace. East Wave Monarch was more or less interested to test if Yiqing Luo and the others were really able to deal with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness and defend the South Wave continent. Then, after the war on the South Billow continent ended, without stopping, he rushed over with Hao Nanren. In East Wave's monarch's heart, Yiqing Luo and the others' abilities were obvious to all. However, Hao Nanren couldn't see the situation clearly and was still putting on airs. East Wave Monarch was so infuriated that he couldn't wait to strangle Hao Nanren. He retrieved the Azure Dragon Pearl from his body and presented it to Yiqing Luo with both hands. The East Wave Sovereign racked his brains to think of a way to explain Hao Nanren's arrogant words. Gu Ming, who was sitting on the high seat, had already heavily slammed the table and sneered. Good. Since that's what the sect leader of the Jade Dome sect thinks of me, then I'll wait for the good news here. This sect master wants to see just how you're going to take down the South Billow continent. Make the South Tide continent your world. Gu Ming spat out each word through gritted teeth. This wasn't because he was relying on the presence of DMO Xian and Yiqing Luo, hence he dared to say these words. This was the courage of their South Tide continent. Just because the South Billow continent was damaged, it didn't mean that it could be bullied by other continents. If the South Billow continent could really be so easily humiliated by others, the South Billow continent wouldn't have lasted until now. If Hao Nan really wanted to fight this battle, I, Gu Ming, will accompany you to the end. Hao Nanren originally thought that his words would definitely scare Gu Ming so much that his face would turn pale and he would soften his tone and beg for mercy. However, he did not expect that Gu Ming would actually dare to accept his challenge. You really won't shed a tear until you see the coffin. I'll fulfill your wish. Hao Nanren clenched his fists, his eyes filled with murderous intent. He strode out of the hall and continued arrogantly. Gu Ming, after I conquer the South Continent, I will hang your corpse on the city gate for 3 days and 3 nights. Gu Ming gripped the seat tightly. His knuckles tightened and his fingertips turned white. He was suppressing his anger. Just as Hao Nanren was about to walk out of the hall, a lazy and cold voice suddenly sounded in the hall. There was a hint of amusement in the voice. Sect Master of the Jade Dome sect, you want to make the South Billow continent your world? Have you asked me? His voice was so light that there was not a hint of emotion in it. But, however, it caused a chill to run down one's spine. Hao Nanren's footsteps halted as he turned his head back abruptly. No matter how arrogant he was, the expression on his face had turned slightly grave. His vision followed the direction of the voice and looked towards Yiqing Luo, that purple-robed man beside her. His expression suddenly turned pale. Hao Nanren was stunned on the spot, until East Billow Monarch bellowed in exasperation, "Scoundrel! Hurry and kneel down." Hao Nanren then regained his senses. Chapter 32-38. His fat body was like a pile of meat. Hao Nanren finally understood. Why did East Billow Monarch kneel down towards Yiqing Luo the minute he entered? The person who East Billow Monarch was kneeling towards wasn't Yiqing Luo, but the person beside her. The Overlord. Beside her? No, wait a minute. Why was the Overlord sitting beside Yiqing Luo? What was the relationship between them? Hao Nanren's intuition told him that he had missed out on some important information. However, the clear and melodious voice that floated over his head had already clearly indicated what exactly he had missed. Jade Dome Sect Sovereign's tone is really arrogant. The young lady giggled, but her tone was filled with ridicule. Even my Xian isn't as arrogant as Jade Dome Sect Sovereign. My Xian? My These two words kept replaying in Hao Nanren's mind. He raised his head abruptly. His eyes stared intently at Yiqing Luo and Di Emotian. He saw the young lady smiling sweetly as she snuggled into the man's arms, whereas that noble and elegant overlord lowered his eyes as he gazed at the young lady as he gave an indulgent smile. The gaze was so gentle that water could be squeezed out. What kind of indulgence was this? Hao Nanren broke out in cold sweat. Yiqing Luo's eyes curved as she met Hao Nanren's gaze as she smiled evilly. In this case, Sect Master Gu and I will wait for Jade Dome Sect's arrival. Xian and I would like to see with our own eyes how Jade Dome Sect Sovereign will turn South Tide Continent into Hao Nanren's world under our eyes. Yiqing Luo's voice was very soft and slow. It was as if they were discussing something extremely ordinary. Hao Nanren was sweating profusely when he heard that. East Billow Monarch immediately spoke. Overlord, Madam Emperor, please be angry, please be angry. He's just anxious. Anxious? Yiqing Luo sneered. From what I see, he has the intention to replace me. One must know that, before the battle, Jade Dome Sect Sovereign was even more arrogant in front of me than today. East Billow Monarch was trembling in fear. Madam Emperor, even if he really has this intention, our East Billow royal family will absolutely not allow him to do this. Yiqing Luo tilted her head as her pink lips curled upwards, appearing to be filled with ridicule. I naturally believe in East Wave Monarch's heart. Yiqing Luo gave a faint smile, but Jade Dome Sect Master. She stood up, her red dress billowing like raging flames, pouring down in torrents. She slowly walked towards the kneeling East Wave Sovereign and Hao Nanren. One step a lotus. Every step she took, the East Wave Sovereign and Hao Nanren felt their hearts skip a beat. Moments later, Yiqing Luo stood in front of the both of them. She bent down and helped the East Wave Sovereign to his feet with a smile. The sleeves of the East Wave Sovereign were drenched in sweat. Yiqing Luo's face didn't reveal any trace of disgust as she continued smiling at the apprehensive East Wave's monarch. East Wave's monarch's heart is for the common people, I understand. The East Wave Sovereign shuddered. After helping the East Wave Sovereign up, Yiqing Luo's vision fell onto Hao Nanren. Does Jade Dome Sect Sovereign know the reason why the East Wave Sovereign specially came to the South Wave's continent to look for me? Hao Nanren's voice trembled as he replied hesitantly. Yes, it's because the forces of the secluded Darkness Palace have already invaded East Wave's continent. Chapter 32-39. Say, consequences. Hao Nanren repeated these two words with a trembling voice. I believe that secluded Darkness Palace hopes to see the two continents fighting against each other. Hearing Hao Nanren's obvious tone of not knowing what he did wrong, Yiqing Luo's voice turned chilly. Jade Dome Sect Master has ever thought that after your two sects kill each other and suffer heavy losses, secluded Darkness Palace will reap the benefits. What will happen to the commoners of East Tide Continent? When Hao Nanren heard that, the fats on his body shook violently as he raised his head with a ghastly pale face. Yiqing Luo sneered. Of course, Jade Dome Sect Master will definitely not bother about what will happen to those commoners. By then, Jade Dome Sect Master only needs to beg for mercy from secluded Darkness Palace and bring Jade Dome Sect to side with secluded Darkness Palace to protect his own life. These words were filled with ridicule. Hao Nanren's pale face suddenly flushed red. Whether he was angry or embarrassed, no one knew. Madam Emperor, no matter what Sect Master Hao does, he will definitely not side with secluded Darkness Palace. East Tide Monarch saw that Hao Nanren didn't express his loyalty for a long time, as he immediately helped. This time, Sect Master Hao even brought the Azure Dragon Pearl personally to show his sincerity. Yiqing Luo glanced sideways at East Tide Monarch, and the chilliness in her eyes made East Tide Monarch feel apprehensive. Her pink lips curled up as she gave a ridiculing smile as she spoke in an extremely indifferent tone. I didn't see sincerity, but I saw Jade Dome's sect master's ambition. This gaze, this tone. It was very obvious that it was sending some kind of message to Easttide Monarch. Easttide Monarch wanted to say something, but he forcefully swallowed it back. Yiqing Luo was warning him. If he spoke up for Hao Nanren again, probably, Yiqing Luo would not give him any face. She might even classify him and Hao Nanren as the same kind of people. Easttide Monarch personally paid a visit to seek help from Yiqing Luo was naturally because of his utmost trust towards Yiqing Luo's ability. As for Hao Nanren, he only had a bargaining chip which he could use to persuade Yiqing Luo. Easttide Monarch naturally wouldn't take the risk of offending Yiqing Luo to speak up for Hao Nanren. The East Wave Sovereign was no longer there to smooth things over. Kneeling on the ground, Hao Nanren's entire body trembled as his smile widened. Empress, this time I really came with sincerity. This is the Green Dragon Pearl. With a reminder from the East Wave Sovereign, Lin Feng was no longer able to control himself. Hao Nanren quickly took out the Azure Dragon Pearl and held it above his head. This is the Azure Dragon Pearl that the Jade Dome sect has been guarding for generations. I present this Azure Dragon Pearl to Lady Emperor on behalf of the Jade Dome sect. Please accept it. However, in Hao Nanren's imagination, the scene of him taking out the Azure Dragon Pearl and Yiqing Luo beaming with joy didn't appear at all. Just like that, he maintained the posture of holding the Azure Dragon Pearl up high for about the time it took for half an incense stick to burn. His hands were a little numb from holding them up. Hao Nanren was annoyed and embarrassed. Suppressing the unhappiness in his heart, he slowly raised his head and secretly looked at Yiqing Luo. The girl was leaning lazily in Di Zun's arms. Her long and narrow eyes seemed to be outlining the most dazzling colors in the world. The expression on the girl's face was indifferent and lazy. She didn't even take a glance at the Azure Dragon Pearl in his hands from the corner of her eyes. He had been yearning for it, treating it as a family heirloom which could save his life. But in Yiqing Luo's eyes, it seemed to be a piece of abandoned stone. Hao Nanren's heart, which was filled with hope, started to sink down bit by bit. Chapter 3240. The East Wave Sovereign, who had been standing to the side and had not dared to speak for a long time, was also taken aback. Didn't Imperial Madam want the Azure Dragon Pearl? Why? But now she was dismissive towards the Azure Dragon Pearl. Could it be that Imperial Madam didn't need the Azure Dragon Pearl anymore? East Wave's monarch was feeling apprehensive. His gaze couldn't help but looked towards Gu Ming's direction, inquiring for the reason. The only way to convince Yiqing Luo to help East Wave's continent was the Azure Dragon Pearl. If Yiqing Luo had no interest in the Azure Dragon Pearl, then what would happen to East Wave's continent? Gu Ming was also in a daze. The entire main hall was silent. No one dared to open their mouths to break this stalemate. They were afraid that if they opened their mouths, Yiqing Luo would think that they wanted to help Hao Nanren. Everyone could see that. Yiqing Luo didn't like Jade Dome sect sovereign. Yiqing Luo didn't like it, which meant that the Overlord didn't like it. If the Overlord didn't like it, then it meant that the Imperial Palace didn't like it. Who dared to offend the Imperial Palace? Offend the Overlord? Hao Nanren maintained his kneeling position, and the action of raising the Azure Dragon Pearl had already made his arms sore and his entire body numb. His fat body was sweating profusely, soaking the ground he was kneeling on. Beads of sweat dripped down drop by drop. He had never suffered such grievance before. Towards Yiqing Luo, Hao Nanren had always looked down on her from the bottom of his heart. His respect, his willingness to kneel down, was all because of the Overlord. But Yiqing Luo was merely using her looks, relying on the fact that she had the backing of the Overlord, which was why she dared to be arrogant in front of him. Did Yiqing Luo really think that defending South Wave's continent was her credit? The disdain in his heart. Under Yiqing Luo's ridiculing gaze, it swiftly took root in his heart. He was extremely furious as the palm, which was holding the Azure Dragon Pearl, clenched tightly. He straightened his body and raised his head. This extremely unyielding action looked extremely comical in Hao Nanren's eyes. He had knelt for too long, raised it for too long. His entire body was stiff and numb. In addition, his entire body was trembling like a ball of meat. If he suddenly straightened his body would not be able to withstand such pressure. His whole body went limp on the ground. The surroundings were filled with suppressed laughter. Angrily, How Nanren hammered the ground and glared around, trying to find out who was laughing at him, even if he had to hold back his laughter. That was not allowed either. Ha ha! Suddenly, a burst of light and sweet-sounding laughter resounded in the air above the hall like silver bells. That laughter was like pearls falling onto a plate, extremely clear and melodious. I didn't expect the sect master of the Jade Dome sect to like sticking his face to the ground so much. The laughter continued, full of mockery. In that case, I'll be merciful and allow you to lie there before the banquet ends. These words. In the end, the soldiers sitting below could not help but laugh out loud. Even the well-trained servants who were serving him by the side laughed out loud. How Nanren's face was burning hot, and the suppressed anger in his heart gushed out in shame and embarrassment. He hammered the ground fiercely as he struggled to climb up from the ground and stared furiously at Yiqing Luo. Are you kidding me? You never thought of helping the East Wave continent. You did it on purpose. He hissed angrily as the fats on his body kept on vibrating along with his emotions. How Nanren's eyes seemed as though it was spitting fire as the fury scorched his heart. Yiqing Luo, don't think that just because you have the support of the Overlord, you can do whatever you want. Suddenly, a deep voice rang.